This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Rock and Roll Denim, Bill Fick Ford, the WCRA, and Resistol. Bill Fick Ford, the #1 Super Duty dealer in the entire country, is still taking care of their customers. It's hard to get trucks right now, but there's some perks when you're the #1 Super Duty dealer in the country. You still got trucks. Go to BillFickFordHuntsville.com to get the no bull discounts that no one else is giving during this crazy time that we're living in. Bill Fick Ford is still the place to go. In fact, if you ask me, it's the only place to get a new Super Duty dealer today. Bill Fick Ford. The Women's Rodeo World Championship is the largest purse in the history of women's rodeo, paying out a total of $750,000. The event will take place October 26th through the 29th in Las Vegas at the South Point Arena. Each Women's Rodeo World Champion will take home a minimum of $60,000 each, while the all-around champion will collect a minimum of $20,000. The championship event dishes out equal money in all disciplines. This is your chance at a piece of that $750,000 purse. Earn your position on the leaderboard by nominating your team roping, breakaway, and barrel racing runs with the WCRA. Visit womensrodeoworldchampionship.com to learn more on how to qualify for the richest event in history of women's rodeo. Again, that's womensrodeoworldchampionship.com.
What sets Resistol apart is the legacy of the cowboys who wear the brand. These traditions are passed down from fathers to sons, from heroes to future champions. Since 1927, Resistol has been handcrafting the finest American-made cowboy hats. Generation after generation, we live it every day.
This is The Gauge with host Chance Conradu.
Are you freaking serious? It's Conrado. This is The Gauge, and I am Chance Conrado. On this episode of the podcast, we've got Tara Sanders of JT Livestock. By popular demand, I can't even remember how many people messaged us asking us to bring her on the show. Well, she's on the show. She talks about everything that she does and, a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's not the shortest podcast, but I think you can get a lot out of it. Check it out.
I know. This was my lesbian. She is now.
Wait, was your lesbian?
Yeah.
So you did the lesbian thing and went straight?
No, she did because listen, stop.
Well,
So what happened was, she came to work for me and realized that women are fucking crazy, and she was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm gonna fuck around and end up with a bitch like this and have to spend the rest of my life with her. So I'm just gonna have to like dick because I can't do this every day. Like, I work with you, but I can't go home and live with one of you two. So she loves me. She will throw hands, gang, gang. But
I don't even know her, and she was willing to throw hands on my behalf. So she's just
love it.
She's down.
She's down. Banana bread. That's right.
Maybe you could sample the banana bread before we do that, just in case they got a good product.
She's been to prison, so her stomach's iron. Iron.
Iron?
Iron gut. You'll
There you
sample
go.
the banana bread. Let us know if it's fantastic. I get the first piece. I want the ends. Got it. All right.
You don't want this banana bread. You go to anywhere in the Metroplex, and everybody knows there's like this. There's a men's home, there's a women's home. Don't know if they're real homes, but they're
they
like,
sell banana bread.
will you buy our banana bread to support our man or woman home? They don't care if you're at Walmart, if you're at Tractor Supply.
I want this
if you're
banana
at
bread.
Stockyards, you think you want it.
No, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like when Desi got carried in the house after spending 1 hour with Jess. I'm seeing flashbacks. Will you carry me? Remember my concrete legs? If I say anything that incriminates us, just we can edit that out, right?
No, this is live on air.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently, you don't know this, but this is live on Cowboy Channel right now.
They would love us.
They wouldn't.
No,
they wouldn't. Different audience.
Very different.
Anyway, well, let's get into it, Tara. So,
Yeah.
first and foremost, do a little introduction on yourself and kind of what your whole deal is, and then that's going to lead into all kinds of things. By the way, she must have told you it's cold in here because that's a serious. I don't even know what you would call that. A shawl?
So
I would call it a wild rag or maybe just a scarf with a pennant.
No.
I'm not really sure.
So I'm a girl's girl. I am one of the few in the world, and a girl was on TikTok and she makes these, and I bought like a dozen of them. because I wanted to support her. She was on there talking about how like she came up with this idea and people were copying her. I'm like, hell yeah. So I bought like one in every color. So then I tricked my husband into buying me suede coats from Scully's to match my, it was a trick. Basically, you got the $20 Pendleton knockoff fleece thing, followed by suede coats of every color.
Yeah.
I don't know. My poor husband. He said today, he was like, I really can't get out of the cow cell. And he's like, they don't want me on there anyway. And I'm like, why? And he's like, we are just proof that opposites attract. He would have said 5 words and given me this look a lot. That's.
Some husbands do that. Yeah, we've had couples on here, a few of them.
Yeah. That's my life. So I brought the lesbian with me instead. So.
Gang, gang.
Gang,
Who
gang.
knows?
No, listen, it's not. So what I was kind of saying earlier, I guess I should start my introduction. So I'm Tara Sanders, and I don't really know how I ended up here other than people apparently requested this.
A lot of people. So out of nowhere, our Facebook and so much so that I'll incriminate myself. Don't shoot me because I say this. I didn't know what JT Livestock was.
No, that's okay.
No one brought it up to me, and I mean I'm pretty well just like head forward in most things, so I'm not like flipping through and didn't really know. And she's like, "Well, you should probably look at the Facebook messages because there's like 30 of them in the last like couple of days asking for these people to come on." I'm like, "Okay, well that's a decent amount of people, so why let them come on?"
So. I will say I was on live video one day and I just happened to say like, well, other than Facebook monetization, like, is there anything else that you guys would want from me? And somebody was like, you need to call the Gauge and go on there because people need to hear like your side of everything. And I was like, I am not going to invite myself on somebody's podcast, but thank you. And then probably 2 weeks later, I got a message. So I think it just snowballed. It started out.
It was quite a few people. I mean, surprised me because you'll get the obvious ones like, oh, you need to have Haley Kinsel on again. Yeah. It's like, no, we don't. She's been on enough. Yeah. You know, or you need to have so-and-so on. Oh, she's the best. But there's a lot of them that are. But usually, like for us, because there's a certain standard for the people we're going to bring on here, like just to where it makes sense.
I'm just going to tell you, I don't meet that standard ever. We were just talking about me having haters, and I'm like, every once in a while we'll get somebody on. And I mean, we get the normal troll. So I have Facebook monetization, and I'll go live on Facebook, and I will never get used to having like 500 people are staring at me.
Right.
And then I'll go back and have 15 or 20,000 replay watches like within 24 hours. And I'm just telling you, like, I don't even have a high school education. Like, honestly, I mean,
I don't either.
I'm never going to get
Even if I did, I wouldn't have been there for it.
Yeah. So it's just kind of weird to me because every once in a while we'll get somebody that's like, I fucking hate her. And I'm like, listen, Helen, I also hate myself some days. Calm down. Just stick around. It's taken me like 30-something years. I've learned to like myself. Just stick around a little longer. You'll learn. But in all honesty, I guess what landed me here is that I have a huge following because people genuinely are good. And I say that, and it's really weird because I also have a lot of haters, but you wouldn't believe, like, in the last 9 years, I started doing what I do now 9 years ago. I had a barrel futurity horse. He was phenomenal. I had no idea what I was doing, and he just was a freak. So fast forward, I really didn't love to run barrels. It was okay. My dad trains racehorses. My dad's won the All-American, so big shoes to fill. It took me till I was like 25, and I finally jumped off. A couple of people that he had trained for asked me if I wanted to train some of their, not futurity horses, and I had some success. I actually was the first trainer to ever win a thoroughbred race and a quarter horse race, my very first start. So I run a mare that day, and she wins a thoroughbred. Well, that night I had another horse in, and she was a quarter horse, and she won too. So I won my first 2 starts with different breeds. Kind of a couple starts later, I qualify in Appaloosa for a futurity. I mean, I had really great customers, but I grew up really poor. It's hard because, and I grew up with a dad that trained racehorses. So everything was always you have horses for money. You have to be competitive.
Daddy was a horse trainer. We didn't have money. That's a trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, with those two things.
So, and my dad, moved away from home at 15. You know, he went to work for Leo Wood, who kind of raised him. And my dad is he's worked for some of the greatest people, Bubba Cassio. Well, my dad went out on his own, won the All-American. And for my dad, that was it. Like, that's what he wanted. He
Didn't want more.
Nope. He bought a farm in Oklahoma. My sister and I got to go to school. And I sometimes want to tell my dad, like, you meant so well. And my sister nor I had any desire to be in school. But he wanted, like, stability and, like, normal. So it didn't.
Because he didn't have it, kind of thing.
He didn't have it. And so my dad is great. And I don't know what happened. I, like, fell off the tree and rolled down the hill. So I'm, like, proof that, like, good people can raise, like, shit humans. Like, seriously.
Shit humans can raise good people, too.
That's right.
It goes both ways.
It goes both ways. It really does. So my parents are, like, salt of the earth. They're great people. So I spent, like, my 20s just trying to figure out, like, it. I look back now, and it was, like, a huge blessing. Because my sophomore year of high school, I started working full-time for a jumping facility. They imported warm bloods from all over the world. They would bring them. They moved to Oklahoma, quarantine them, get them back fit, and then send them to trainers to resell. So I learned a whole part of the industry, and they paid money. Like, I didn't have to be a working student. I could, like, go there and earn a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
It was insane. So I'd, like, pull mains, ride. But when they moved back to Canada, when I guess I would have been just like, I didn't graduate high school, but I would have been just graduated. They moved back to Canada. So I realized I have to do something. Well, I was dating a guy, and he was from around the racetrack, but he was living with a barrel futurity trainer. So I was like, I can do this. I had a pretty nice horse. He won quite a bit, but not because of me. Like, he probably could have been phenomenal. I broke my leg, and Jackie, Doobie Jatzla, she rode him, and he won a slot race with her because I broke my leg. So when that was over, I realized really fast it wasn't that easy, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So I went back to the racetrack, but what I learned about every industry after leaving the English industry, where there was a lot of money, is that, like, with the racehorses and even with barrel horses and stuff, there's just not a lot of money there. So to learn, you can't really go to work for somebody and learn. Like, everybody wants to do, like, an internship where you just work for free.
There's a lot of problems with internships for especially barrel fraternity or barrel horse internships is the people you're interning for really probably can't pay you, and the day they're supposed to, they're probably not going to be able to. So.
And so, yes. So once I kind of figured out, like, that horse was phenomenal, but people had always said, like, why didn't you train? And I said, because I didn't want to take people's money when there's no way. Like, I was not phenomenal at that. So I never really wanted to be a barrel futurity trainer, but what I did know how to do was market horses because I had worked for Equiglobe, and they were fantastic. I mean, so they took great pictures and videos, and I learned how to build their website and edit their website and YouTube. And so through high school on and off, I would put horses online for my dad off the track. Barrel racers would buy them, which is how I met the guy that lived with the barrel racer. So fast forward, like, after that, I go back to training racehorses. I do pretty good, but the entire time I'm doing this, I just keep thinking, like, I am working 7 days a week. I can barely pay my staff. I cannot hardly pay my bills. And I'm winning races. It's not like I'm somebody that has, like, 70 starts and no wins. Like, I'm cracking them out. Like, and I still can't pay my bills. So the meets end, and my then boyfriend and I go home, like, kind of towards the end of, like, the Tulsa meet when Will Rogers started, which is in Claremore. And he called me one night, and he said, like, this is how this all got started. This is what's really funny is, like, so I come from this whole background, and people always wonder, like, how did you get into, like, a kill pen? And I'm like, ugh. So this is where the good part starts. So he calls me, and he's like, hey, he's like, make a pin or whatever. Like, this guy's going to drop a horse off by the house. I bought him at the sale today, but I didn't buy enough to send everything to Louisiana. So, you know, like, can you find somewhere for him to go? And I'm like, I guess. And he's like, yeah, he's supposed to be broke or whatever. He's like, but basically my husband was going to sales, and he buys cattle, which that's a good story too. And you need to have him on because he ended up with a felony. It's great. But at the time, he was buying the horses to kind of, like, pay his fuel. He was making commission. And then, like, kill buyers would need horses for loads, and they would always have them so they could kind of sell them to them like for higher prices because they needed to fill their loads or whatever. So the way it kind of worked is, of course, it unloads. I'm a horse person, so I jump on it in a halter and lead rope, and this sucker's like broke, like spin a hole in the ground, broke. So I put him on my Facebook, and I call my husband, and I'm like, hey, like, I think I've got somewhere for that horse to go. He's like, great, as long as I don't have to look at him. I don't want anything else to feed. Like, to my husband, horses are like
tools,
a feed bill.
Yeah,
a feed bill. You know, I mean, he was married to a barrel racer, and then I have race horses and barrel horses. I kind of barrel raced still. So they're feed bills. So this one doesn't have anywhere to go. So I'm like, all right. So I ride him again, get a video, put him online, and he sells like the next day. So I get ready to go to a barrel race that weekend, and my husband's like, so you need any money? And I'm like, no. And actually the money from that horse is in the drawer. And my husband's like, you sold it? I'm like, yeah, he thought I just gave it away. Like at that point, he just wanted rid of this sucker because it was standing in our front yard because I didn't really have room there for another horse. So anyway, he walks back in there, and he's like got $4,500. And he's like, what the fuck is this? You know? And I'm like, I sold that horse. And he was like, he was that nice? And I was like, yeah, like he was handy broke. He was like, damn, I bought him at the cow sale for like $400.
Right.
The horse market has changed in 9 years. You can't buy them for $400 anymore, but 9 years ago you could. So anyway, like the next week I kind of said like, hey, do you have any more horses? Like I've had a couple more messages about him, but I don't, he's sold. He's like, yeah, but let me just tell you, he's like, that's a freak deal. Like these sell barn horses, we never know why they get dropped off. And he's like, a lot of them have heaves, and he's like telling me like the horses that I'm buying are going to slaughter. Like sometimes the different kill buyers at the time just buy them from us. And he was like, I make commission. He was like, so they give me what I pay for them plus profit. He was like, it pays my my fuel to the cells, like it pays my lunch, Tara. He was right. He even said one time, I will never forget this. He's like, listen, he was like, I bought a couple horses at the sale. He was like, that was $500. He was like, some people work a whole week and don't make $500, Tara. Like, I can't make a habit of like feeding them.
Right.
I just want them gone. So, like another week goes by, he calls me and he's like, I've got a little dun mare. She's pretty nice. He sends her to the house. She sells. I mean, lickety split. Super cute little mare. Somebody had done a lot with her. She towed in, but just a grade mare. She sells. So fast forward and like it just kind of trucks along to where it's like one every couple of weeks. Well, we go home to his parents for Christmas. And my husband's brother buys cattle, a lot of his family, and they are all buying any cow sale they go to. If there's horses, they buy them, they bring them home, and then they were just selling them for kill. And if they had a big enough load, they had it worked out where they could just ship them to the border,
Right.
And like just work it out because sometimes there's not enough horses. That's a whole other.
Well, and that's kind of a dark side of horses that I don't think a lot of people in our world really know much about unless they're doing it. I think it would be good to kind of elaborate on what actually happens with a lot of these no-name horses because there's so many horses out there that just someone like me, I would never see them.
Yep. So, yeah. So for sure, the worst thing that ever happened was actually, I think it was during Bush. They ended horse slaughter in the United States. So people always want to say Democrat, Republican, but Bush ended it. Obama at least allowed the export of horses again. So, I mean, I'm a Republican, but I
don't know if Bush really was.
I don't know either. But, and I'm not smart enough. Like, that's above my pay grade. I always tell people when they want my political stance on anything, I'm like, that's above my pay grade. I just go live on Facebook and somehow fell down a gaming stream and ended up monetized. And now, like, I'm just proof that in America, you don't have to have a college education or be like a genius to make money because it happened. But I will say that we do need to bring slaughter back to the U.S. What I do find is that the horses that genuinely need to go to slaughter don't need to suffer the ride from anywhere into Mexico. Like a lot of the horses that actually need to go have heaves or are foundered or have HYPP or things that stress make worse. And if we had, and
these are all terminal conditions.
They are things. And in a perfect world, we would just euthanize them. But like, I try to tell people like, first of all, we can't even get people to be decent to their children. So you think or to dogs, which are pets. So you think people are just going to be decent to the horses.
Well, and it's just another one of those things, right? So it's one of those out of sight, out of mind things. We're in a mecca for horses. Like everybody that rodeos or cuts or does any of these what you would call high-end things with high-grade horses, none of us know what's going on. I've never seen a kill pen. I've never been to a kill pen.
I've seen some shit. So
this is really interesting.
I've seen some fucking shit, man. So, and over 9 years, it's been a long span. So when I started doing this, at first I was a hero, and people were like, it's amazing. Well, then I kind of was training racehorses, and there would be people that would be really jealous, and they'd be like, oh, well, her horses need to all be tested for strangles because she brings horses from sale barns home. So there was like a lot of envy in anything horse-related, because now we're making money, like selling the horses. And,
that's the Achilles heel in the horse business.
Oh, you have no idea.
Can't make money or you're Satan.
That's right. And so that's a whole other, yes, we will touch on that.
It's a reality.
We will touch on that. So kind of where it ended up that I'm not overly competitive, and I am really a girl's girl. Like, I'm the one girl that's like proud for everybody. Like, if you beat me, you worked your ass off, because I have the work ethic of an uneducated, didn't graduate high school barn slave. I mean, that's my work ethic. So like, I can do 4 a.m. to 2 a.m., sleep, jump up and do it again. And so I know that if somebody beats me at something, I know how hard it is to be a winner. I watched my dad for years train racehorses. It's hard to win. I tried to run barrels, like competitively. I had a phenomenal horse. He made money. He was great. It's hard. I don't care what you do competitive. It's okay. You can go run in the 3D. You can go run in the 2D. But to be a competitive 1D rider, I don't care who you are, you earn that.
Especially here.
You earn it.
Yeah.
And I see people say, oh, well, she bought her horse. It doesn't matter. She has to keep that sucker fit. She pays those vet bills. She hauls him. She has to ride him. And it is a different ballgame to ride a real 1D horse. So I have all the respect in the world for anybody who can win at anything, because you can play a sport, you can be part of a sport, but to win at something, you are a different animal. So I'm one of the only people, though, that has that mentality. Like, if you beat me, I know that you worked for it. Because I will get up and work.
It's a totally different mentality, because you have the pay-to-play people. And I mean, this is one of the greatest debates in rodeo, right? Mm-hmm. You've got the top people who rodeo. Rodeo is a great example, right? This is a debate that we have in here often. Mm-hmm. You've got the top 1% of the people, your people who are in the top 15 year in and year out. Then you've got a couple thousand other people who pay a membership to the WCRA, right, the PRCA.
And
they pay to play. They want to go to the big rodeos. They're mad if they can't enter Fort Worth. But then on the other side of it, you've got these true professional 1% athletes.
Absolutely.
True athletes. And I don't care if it's a barrel racer or if it's a bareback rider or whatever. They're athletes. It's not that simple to just do it. So it's a very difficult conversation.
Kind of what I think that mentality, though, to where I'm happy for everybody. Also, I made the mistake one time of saying the wrong thing at a table full of horse trainers. Men, little ego. I said, when are y'all going to realize that you're a rich man's luxury? Like, you're nothing more than a rich man's luxury. And I'm telling you, like, I made some enemies. And so for me, I always got it. Like, those people that pay to play are the greatest thing that could happen to rodeo. Do you know why? Because they can't beat you, but you're still running for their money. You're still competing for their money. So those people, to me, deserve as much respect as anybody and should be treated just as equal, because you have to remember, without those people, where's the money going to come from? Because sponsorships are few and far between. Let's be honest, with as much animal activism as we have going on in the world right now, companies aren't lined up out the door wanting to stand behind rodeo. Like, okay, so there's a lot of great companies. Please don't think that I'm knocking those. But like, Facebook is Meta. That's a whole other. I accidentally ended up at a Facebook creator convention, which was all gamers. And I was the only person that realized I somehow had fallen down the Facebook gamer hole on accident and didn't belong there. So Meta, which is what Facebook is now, is moving to Austin. They're going to be in for a rude awakening because they're in Silicon Valley right now. And all of these like billion-dollar companies are there. But when I tell you that the conversation was brought up at this Facebook creator convention, that, well, one day cows are going to be extinct and they will stop like producing emissions and ruining our planet, and we can just go see them in the zoo. my brain just fell out my ear on the ground because I at that point, I just was like, I am in the wrong place. So the good thing about the Western industry is it's a great way of life. The problem is there's a whole world of people out there that don't understand it and don't want to be a part of it.
And don't care about it. That's one of the things that, like, if you spend time outside of the Western world for any other thing, you realize just how small our subculture is.
Absolutely.
And the issue with small subcultures, and I've said this and been ridiculed for it plenty of times, but is that you don't know what the fuck's going on the outside world. People in this industry, even the best and brightest, that's why this show even exists. Like, if you talk to regular people, there's no such thing as an intellectual cowboy. Those two words can't go together.
Yeah.
Right? You can't be brilliant and successful and be a cowboy. Like, if you're a cowboy, you're just freaking Jimmy from Yellowstone, which I like Yellowstone, but even that's not the best thing for us.
No, and so not to talk in circles, but
Yeah.
but I do think that the equine industry as a whole, rodeo, everything else, you have to realize how we're really not a small industry. We are, I think, like, it was brought up like billions, maybe like $122 billion industry.
I mean, if you're pulling everything,
yes.
I mean, I don't know if that includes like thoroughbreds and going across the world, but
yes,
certainly it's got to be in the 100 billion range, which in the grand scheme of things, like, that's small on a global scale, but it's still substantial enough that it can invoke change.
But what's kind of neat about what I do is I have people that are now listening to me that are dressage riders, jumpers, hunters. Like, so my market is extremely diverse because when we unload a load of kill horses at my house, there's something for everybody. I will have sorting horses. I will have a really good older team roping horse that we get some horses kind of from this area that college kids can't afford to maintain, but for a low-numbered roper are like fire. Those kids, you know, their parents bought it. They have no idea what that thing cost. They just know they don't want to haul it and have a tox injected. But Bob over here, who has been team roping for 4 months, can afford, because he's a doctor, can afford to inject the hocks and have the osteopath out. And that's my demographic of customer. And they feel amazing about taking this horse out of the situation, improving his life, and they can't wait to go tell everybody. Like,
the guy who would pay 20, but he's not going to go to an outfit and pay 60 kind of guy, right?
Right. So it's kind of neat because half the time, like, their wives find me and their husband wants to team rope. We have a team roping horse. And the next thing I know, she's like, I'm going to buy this horse for my husband. So that's a little later on in the conversation. But what I started to learn is that people that are doctors and lawyers and teachers and people are wanting to get back into the Western way of life. And COVID, I almost died from it. I was in the hospital 28 days. So it's not a joke. And I would never say it's great for anything. But when COVID hit and people were isolated, we started selling more horses than I've ever sold in my life.
Anybody who sold anything outdoors sold more of them.
Right. I mean, people were calling. My wife and I want to get into trail riding. Like, that was a big thing. So when COVID hit, and then Yellowstone's been great. Of course, people see Yellowstone. It has opened, I think, for like maybe the performance horses, more people are getting into that and wanting to go to those events. But for us, I can just tell you with COVID, my phones rang off the hook for horses. And it's still that way because people did take a step back. But it also is where the meta was created, which was Facebook's way of creating a virtual universe. And they genuinely believe, I laugh to keep from crying because I really don't think you guys realize how serious. I mean, I went to a convention with Facebook creators, thousands of people.
Oh, I mean, very few people in our world probably have any idea what's going on. Like, if you listen to...
But you know, right, a little bit?
Oh,
like,
I know.
About meta?
I made it a point to figure it. So I've got one of these stupid brains where I have to know just enough about everything to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
Which means I get nothing done. But at least I know some shit.
Right.
So we can talk about it.
So how my Facebook got monetized was so I started 9 years ago putting a horse or two on Facebook, and it grew to where it went from like one to one here and there to like one a week to for Christmas we go home. First time I met his parents, and I get out and there's like a whole pen of horses standing in mud to their knees. I'm shocked. I train racehorses. I am like devastated.
You don't treat them that way.
No, this is like cruelty to me. And so I'm telling you, like, when people say things about like, well, the kill pin is, like, there's a lot of kill pins out there that I think I've seen some stuff. Like, I'll just tell you right now that I've seen some things that are not.
Make you lose some sleep.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And not even at the hands of kill buyers. I've seen employees at sell barns. I mean, and you have to be careful what you say or what you bring light to, because there is an animal activist on every corner wanting to end rodeo, wanting to end livestock auctions, wanting to end cattle slaughter. So you have to also remember that sometimes it's not that I don't want to whistle blow. It's just also that how much can our industry take without, like the racehorse industry, especially the thoroughbreds, are like succumbing to animal activists. Like they are just trying to appease them.
Because it's the biggest market with the biggest sponsors. Like you'll see the same thing in any of the industries. Like look at some of the Olympic horse things. I mean, for God's sakes, that bitch got pulled off for like touching that horse's butt. What was that in the Olympics?
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, that could have been a good job. What did she do? She like jiggled the rein. She did something that was just like, come on.
She smacked him.
And she was out on a plane out of the country.
Yep. And I kind of have said, like, anybody that owns a horse that hasn't done worse is a liar. I don't care who you are.
Find me one horse owner whose horse was being an asshole getting shot that you didn't kick in the belly at least one time.
Yeah, so at my facility, Elizabeth will tell you, my husband calls me a tree hugger because not only do I honestly have higher standards because my dad trained racehorses, but I also have been under a lot of scrutiny from women that just have unrealistic expectations because they watch everything I do and they dissect everything I do to a point that it's obsession. Like I have a group on Facebook that just follows everything I do to talk about it. Like it's insane. So we make a joke out of it all the time because their views, I mean, I have a Facebook group that's monetized, so you have to pay $20 a month to just be welcome in this group so you can ask me questions. We have 600 people in that group. People lose their mind all the time on me that is $12,000 a month revenue. Like, it just angry. We have women that pay to be in that group $240 a year just so they can like screen record what I say or do so they can take it over here and discuss it. It's fine. I don't really care. Either way, I get money. It's fine. Like you can, at the end of the day, what people see on Facebook, I'm not stupid. Like they see very limited parts of my life. But what I've learned from being Facebook monetized is the horse community is insane. But there's lots of great people. There's great people out there that want to be a part of the community. They just don't know how. And sometimes I think that, especially in the Western world, it can almost be its own worst enemy because there are people on every corner that want to belong, and then they go to events and get treated so poorly. So poorly. Laughed at or, talked about or ostracized. And I think that it's the one thing that the English industry has done is created a trainer to student relationship that's maybe a little bit, I think some of the like reining and cutting horses have done that, but like in the barrel horse industry, I see people that will take advice from an 18-year-old kid at a play day just because she's actually offering help instead of laughing, and then next thing you know, the 18-year-old has like a Facebook and they're a trainer, and it's wild to me. But it's what has helped my Facebook monetization the most is there are so many people out there that want to learn how to wrap legs. I have people that will message me and say, I really don't know how to put a rope halter on, but I love them. I want to order those halters, but can you like make me a video to like show me how to put my, So people forget that there's tons of people out there that want to belong to the horse industry.
Guys, Rock and Roll Denim has absolutely changed the game when it comes to the performance and style in Western jeans. Top competitors like Shad, Tim O'Connell, Shelly Morgan, you name it. Your boy right here. We're all wearing Rock and Roll Denim inside and outside of the arena. It gives you the flexibility you need to win, as well as looking absolutely great in your interviews, appearances, whatever it is you're doing. Even when you're just doing podcasts like me. I had a chance to go to Rock and Roll Denim's factory the other day and pick out all the pants I wanted. Here's the thing. I got to try on a bunch of their new jeans. I love the men's revolver jeans with the reflex stretch technology because they're comfy. They're not stiff like some of the other jeans. Go check them out at rockandrolldenim.com or follow Rock and Roll Denim on Facebook and Instagram for the newest trends in Western fashion. rockandrolldenim.com. Guys, mark your calendar booked January 30th, 2 to 5 p.m. in Sunset, Texas at Double X Equine. The fantastic Lieutenant Colonel Alan West is coming for a meet and greet. He's there to answer any questions you have because he is running for governor in the 2022 race here in Great Texas. He has some phenomenal ideas. We here at The Gauge 100% endorse Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. He just appeared on an episode of The Gauge. I encourage you to go check that one out. Remember, save the date. Don't do anything but this on January 30th. Whether you agree with us or disagree with us, we want you to come. Everyone's welcome. There's going to be food, probably going to be a badger. Come on.
I don't even know how we got off on this leg, but
it's actually something that I can relate to, right? Because it's like I come from a very specific place with very specific people, and to me, they're the best people on planet Earth,
right?
And like you're saying things that I agree with and the things I don't agree with. Like if you go to a barrel race, if you walked up to let's just pick somebody like a Jolene Montgomery. If you catch her in the right moment and she's not buried to death because she's got 13 colts there that she's trying to run, she's going to be real nice to you.
She's fantastic.
If she doesn't have time, she just doesn't have time.
She doesn't have time.
The people that are bitches, though, the real, everybody knows them at every barrel race or whatever. It's those 2D, 3. I'm not saying it is, but there's a type of person who does it, who thinks they're better than everybody else. But we all know some of them, a dozen of them, 250 of them.
Right. And
the fact that they barrel race and like all they want to talk about is barrel racing and everything that they do to support their barrel racing habit is just going to create this cycle. Well, that's their whole life.
That's right.
That if you do anything that's outside of Fallon Taylor gets ridiculed to high heaven, and she's a world freaking champion. She's
brilliant, though. Listen.
These are the type of people who are ridiculing her. None of the top people are doing it.
I've actually never met her in person. Like I've never met her in person. I've had my own dealing through a horse, but I will tell you that I have nothing but respect for her, and I'll tell you why. Fallon helps people that other people won't help, and it's my demographic.
She acknowledges they exist first. No one else has ever done that.
Right. Well. Yes, but so for what I do isn't the barrel horse industry. Like I said, mine is across the board.
Yeah, you're everything.
I'm everything. So where I did really good is from the very beginning, I just remembered that from training racehorses, most of the people that owned racehorses walked into the barn and like you had to point out which one belonged to them. Honestly. 2 gray horses look exactly alike. I can't tell you how many times I've walked in the barn and she's like petting a sorrel and she's like, I just love him. And I'm like, she doesn't belong to you. Yours is down there. Which is fine. So I was kind of accustomed to like that mindset of I just love this horse. I want to love it. So what was hard for me though was, so I've trained racehorses and now we start selling more and more horses. I go home for Christmas. Literally, I'm devastated when I see all these horses and I just tell Jacob like, this can't be a thing. Like they can't live like this. And he's like, they're going to be gone in the morning. Like they just got here 3 hours ago. They're standing on a round bell. They'll be gone in the morning. The truck will pick them up. And I'm like, no, I have to do something. So that didn't go well. On the way home, I'm like convincing him, like, why don't you let me ride through them? Then I get well, I make like $500 a week commission, just on horses. He's a cattle buyer. So anything horse is just extra. And he's like, do the math on that, Tara. Like $500 a week times 52 weeks. Like, it's great. He's like, there's some weeks I make $900. I go to 2 or 3 sales. There will be, especially in the winter, people are dumping horses. What I found was my husband finds better horses than most people because he's not going to horse sales where there's horse traders. So he's buying horses that individuals have just had to sell. So most of them are like selling out of necessity, not because the horse is a problematic horse.
Sure.
So what I ended up promising my husband is like, listen, if you will let me try to home them, it won't cost you any money. Like, I will just, and then whatever doesn't ride or whatever, you can collect them and then you can sell them for slaughter. Like, that's how it was all fun and games until like a couple months go by. And then one of the guys he kind of partnered with that they shipped horses, he said, where are the rest of the horses on this bill? Like, you sold us 4, but there were 8. And Jacob just told him, like, my girlfriend took them. And he was like, yeah, here's the deal. It's all or nothing. Like, it's all or nothing. So we're going to buy all of them. Because now, and I get it. I'm sure they probably get them home.
Business is business.
Right. So at that point, Jacob was like, going to stop this. I was still kind of training racehorses. And I told him, I'm going to stop training racehorses and dedicate time to this. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to help these horses. But just a lot of stuff had gone on in our life. Jacob had worked for a company that he bought cattle for, and it ended up being a really bad deal. And Jacob got holding a lot of bad checks. Like, he had written checks thinking they were going to wire the money. The cattle were already slaughtered. They didn't pay him. So the cattle industry is something that people need to know.
Well, that happens in the horse industry, too. You're always waiting on a check.
Yeah. Well, he had worked with these people for a long time, though, to where they had built up enough of a
rapport with them.
That he was willing to leave a 6-figure check at a sell barn for loads of cattle that didn't come. And I mean, anyway, that guy's in prison. Jacob did get a felony. He's on probation. It's its own thing. So at the time, like, we don't really have a lot. I'm training racehorses. We can definitely barely eat. Like, I'm counting change to, like, go to Burger King. And it was really crazy because I told him, like, it's just not going to cost you money, but I think I can really do some good for these horses because I'm tired of seeing them stand in these kill pens. And I would see them come to pick them up and, like, whip them to load them on these trucks and hit them in the face. You know, the kill buyers would send, like, their trucks to pick the horses up, and I couldn't stomach it.
If you saw somebody do on your place, you'd whip their ass.
I would not be okay with it. Yep. Like, we don't. But I was raised different. And so as fast forward, you know, I've learned a lot about the kill horse industry, and I made some phone calls, and we have a friend in Oklahoma that it's Toots Baker now. Her husband, George, passed away, but I called George and I said, George, I've got myself in a predicament. My nose was broke at the time. I had got punched at a sell barn. In people have asked me why I didn't press charges, and I said, well, in his defense, I threw the first punch. So
it was a guy.
It was a guy. And I feel like if you're a big enough bitch to hit a man, like, and he hits you back, like, what did you expect? So
I'm going to go on record and say I bet a lot of women don't agree with that.
Probably not, but I do. I mean, if you're...
It's a ranchy mindset.
I have a pretty dirty left hook. Like, if you're going to whip my butt, you're going to work for it. So so I call him and I just said, like, hey, I've got us in a predicament. Like, you know, my boyfriend's been selling, like, he's been buying all these horses and selling them, and they've been sending them to the border and basically, like, partnering on these horses. And this is ruined, and this is what happened. Like, will you help me? And he's like, sure, anything that doesn't ride, just bring to me, no problem. So I will give them a lot of credit because in a position to where, like, we had nothing and, like, we had exhausted our savings and attorneys just trying to prove that, like, Jacob didn't, you know. And anytime people see that, they automatically see, and they're like, oh, like, they think somebody, like, backed up to a pasture and loaded cattle and stole them. And I'm like, right. No, that's not how the order buying industry works. Like, my husband left a check at a sell barn for cattle that somebody else owned. They were supposed to wire the money. They picked the cattle up. They slaughtered all of them, and then they never paid my husband. So, but it's still kiting checks. I mean, it's still not okay. I mean, it's something we don't have to do today, but that's right. But I will tell you that there's lots of people in the cattle industry that do because...
Well, it's a hand-to-mouth industry.
Well, the packers are making, you know, they're making a lot. Like, if you see what stores charge and then what people that's, like, we have kill cows now that we sell, and we have a law on feed. And so just know, I don't know as much about that because that I do horses, Jacob does cattle. And I wish that he could have missed sells to be here, but he makes sells 4 days a week, and yeah, it happens. But kind of the thing that I can tell you is that they were fantastic to me, and then they made it to where we were able to just privately send the horses that don't work out directly to the border, which was fantastic. So the only thing that really sucked through all of this is that slaughter is not in the U.S., and I want to be on record as saying if you love horses, you need to be a voice for them because we need horse slaughter for a multitude of reasons. And if you've seen the amount of suffering I've seen, you would understand how necessary it is. And we're never going to live in a perfect world where people are going to euthanize their horse and bury it in the backyard. People take their horse to the sell barn when they don't want to deal with it anymore.
Drive on the back roads from Fort Worth to Tulsa and look at, like, just that. Just look at all the shitty nag horses that are standing on, like, rusty old cars, and you see just some moldy hay, and they're all gaunt, and, like, you pick any back road in any state and drive down it and look at the horses.
So in Louisiana, it rains all the time, so the nutrition in the grass is not really, like, as good.
Yeah.
And it never freezes, so the bugs never die. So horses get way warmier. They get ear mites. So being in Louisiana was also eye-opening because it's crawfish country, not horse country. Right. I mean, people from down there will argue and tell you that that's where the best racehorses come from. That's where the best horses come from. They do produce fantastic horses. I mean, I think we live in a society now to where most people who breed do a pretty good job. And, I mean, we're more discipline specific.
Oh, the last decade has really
yes
elevated the breeding
Absolutely.
game. At least on the western side, they've had it down with racehorses for a lot longer.
Absolutely. So, and that's something, I mean, there's just a lot to touch on. Like, I think that this is the part that sucks for me is like growing up the way I grew up, working for Equigol, they brought in 6-figure warm bloods. Everything that unloaded was amazing, you know, and then my dad training racehorses and then being a little bit into the barrel horse industry. Like I said, I have mad respect for people who barrel race. That industry is, and I think it's relatively new compared to like the racehorse industry or like jumping. So
the money is new, the sport not new, but the money is much newer.
But you know, I still think the sport is relatively new though compared to some of those things that have been going on for, like they've been racing horses for centuries. So
they have, yeah.
So I think that, you know, it's just evolving and I, like I said, anytime you're a winner at anything, you put a lot of work into it. But sitting in the position I'm in, I have seen people like, okay, I also have to deal with a lot of rescues. And I firmly believe that 90% of people that get into the rescue side of things do it because they're like a very damaged individual. And they feel like they need to be saved. So they're trying to like virtue signal and go save things to like feel better. But they are still very damaged individuals. And we see a lot of people that end up in hoarding situations. I can't tell you how many rescues, like we sold some horses to a place here in Texas and they picked them up. And somehow like 2 days later, a horse ended up like dead in a parking lot. Seriously. And it was like microchipped because in Louisiana, you have to microchip your horses to have a Coggins. Like it's just state law, which that's a whole other thing. But it got on Facebook that like the horse had come from us. So people are like shaming me and like saying like, oh, look at what they've done. Like they did this to this horse.
Did the horse come from you originally?
Yeah. Like, yeah. So there was a set of 19 colts and they came from the sell barn emaciated and one rescue fundraised on Facebook. And of course, fundraising is a different breed because you have to have a villain. Like you have to pull at people's heartstrings and have a villain. So of course the kill buyer is always the villain, not the person that dumped him at the sell barn. And anyway, so this horse ends up like dead in a parking lot. This lady that ran the rescue picked up half the colts in a trailer and like went to the casino and like went inside and played and left them in the summer of Louisiana, like outside. And then like got to get diesel and realized that there was one down. So she like got him out, I guess, to try to save him and like spray him off. Well, then he never got back up. So she just left him. Well, he was microchipped back to us. This is not even a joke. But the only good thing that happened from that is when they contacted us and we were like, look, that horse left us like 48 hours ago. Why is it even still in Louisiana? The health certificate is to this address. They ended up following the trail and get to this lady's house and she has like 90 rescue horses and they're like all over this property and they're all like body scores of 1 to 1.5. She had been getting away with it for a long time because when she would adopt one out, well, the kill buyer did it. He's a villain, you know, they starve those horses. Well, first of all, we make money by weight, so nobody's going to starve them. That makes no sense, but they ended up like shutting down this rescue and like taking all of these horses away. And you can
90 head of horses?
Yeah,
Holy
like
shit.
and like she had like 4 acres.
What?
Yeah. I'll show you. Like, I mean, these are things that you can Google, but it didn't matter because, see, the attention at the time had just been like...
Yeah, headline,
horse from kill pen dump. So people, I don't know, I guess maybe they thought that, like, you know, we did it. But, yeah, like, when you Google it, there's, like, tons of articles where, I mean, I think there was, like, 90 live animals and 25 dead. So at the time...
So this lady was just absolutely batshit crazy.
But there's a lot of them in the horse world. Like, so the thing about kill pen rehoming that's kind of made me grow the way that I have is that I don't really cater to the rescues. I don't allow fundraising. I really feel like if you can't afford to purchase the horse, especially for what I'm asking, you probably don't really need to own it. So in some rare cases...
If you can't afford the horse, can you afford to take care of it correctly?
Right.
Probably not.
So occasionally we'll have somebody that lives in California and they have board and, we'll let them pay half down. And if they want to fundraise like amongst their friends, we'll give them 5 days to pay the balance. But they still have to pay my vet. So we have a vet that comes out like every single Tuesday and he floats teeth and does like lameness exams. The reason we allow that is because some people will turn around and donate horses. Like say you purchased it, you love it, but you don't want it to go to slaughter, but you need a for sure sound horse because you're going to try to train it. If there's something wrong with it, I obviously don't know. I don't have x-ray vision. You can do other things with it except for haul it all the way to California and board it for months to find out. Like, so we have a performance horse vet. He comes out, x-rays, does everything after you purchase them. We have an osteopath that comes out. Like, so I have just kind of done something completely different because a lot of kill pen rehoming is photographs. And what they do is they take these photos and make these sad stories, and those kill buyers don't care. Like, they're not on social media like I am to where they have to see everything that's said about them, so they don't care if they're the villain of the story.
Yeah, there's no face.
There's no face at all. And I'm telling you, the worst thing I ever did was put my face on there because I've had some shit said about me that is just... Sometimes we'll read it and laugh because I feel like they're talking about, like, a completely different human. Like, none of that actually happened, but according to Facebook, it did.
Well, that's the entire social media thing.
Oh,
actually, that's just media, but
it's pretty bad. So like this rescue, the only thing good that came of that, like it got like on some of the barrel horse boards and stuff. And like I had people that knew me that were like, I don't know what happened to her. She must be on drugs. Like, why would I allow this horse to be like dumped in this parking lot in that condition? Because people don't realize like
when they don't ask, they just assume.
Whatever
Whatever the worst thing is. That's the cool thing well, it's not cool. It's actually really freaking sad, but we've learned so much about human psychology through this pandemic,
right?
That people are just not as smart as we thought.
No,
we were as a species.
We're not.
We're really not that far off from the apes.
Listen, if I ever thought honestly that was like not a true statement, I went to that one Facebook creator convention and I learned in that moment that there's a lot of not common sense out there. They really genuinely believe that cattle are producing the emissions that are ruining our environment.
They were told that.
They believe it.
Some professor who's never left the metro, like whatever metro place they were born, who never did anything other than go to college and decided to work at college. It's like, you know what I think? Cows are the devil. No, really. I just know that they were like basically just cheering for this virtual reality. So the methane thing, it's so interesting, and I don't know how deep you get into it, but I have to because I talk to people about it all the time. But There's so many long-term studies that, like, if you look at the study of methane emissions from a cow and how they'll compare it to cars,
right?
They're comparing that from the entire life of a cow.
Right.
And they're only comparing it from like this one strip of a highway for the car. So they're not even comparing it apples to apples. So you're comparing potentially
Absolutely.
like a 10, 12-year-old cow his entire life, entire herd in one segment of the United States to like one car that went by this one thing. Like you're not even presenting the data real. So it's just not true.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I mean, I fell down that rabbit hole. Like once I came home from that, I have to take a deep breath because like I didn't know if I should like get on Facebook and make a video because I didn't want to be like this conspiracy theorist. So it makes me feel good that you at least know what I'm talking about because most people have no idea when I tell them that like Facebook has rebranded as the Meta and it's for the metaverse and they're wanting for all people to work remotely from a virtual reality and never leave our homes.
Oh, there's all kinds of people talking. You don't have to go very far to get all this information. I mean,
no.
Look at the Facebook whistleblower that came out, what was that, a couple months ago, and like it was all just set up very cleverly from the powers that be to try to usher in this whole thing. And it appeals to kids. Like
it does.
There's nothing outside that could possibly be better than the virtual world.
That's
Why
exactly
go outside?
Right. So a lot of that is about in the animal cruelty world too, because it was brought up to my face that how great will it be when animals are extinct so nobody can abuse them again. And I just realized, like
so
I
let's
realized,
kill them all so nobody can hurt them.
Yes, that is
great.
No, it's shocking because I almost feel like an idiot saying that. Like sitting here with somebody that's in the Western community. My husband buys cattle, so we buy cows for slaughter and then we have like younger calves that go to feed and Some of them are financed. A lot of them aren't anymore. Like the horses have really put us in a much better position. Like if you would have told me 5 years ago that I would be making $500,000 a year from Facebook, that's just profit, and then 7 figures off of horses, I would have laughed and told you like, it's never going to happen. But last year alone, we rolled through almost 5,000 head of horses, and I privately sold to individuals around 3,000 of those. So when I tell you that I go through some horses.
So out of those 3,000 horses, 2,000 of them didn't check, went to the slaughter,
No.
correct?
We bought, so between the sales, like, I mean, obviously for my taxes, like here's what I made, and then here's the bills from the sales. So we bought like 4,800 horses in a year.
Sure.
In a whole year. And I'm going to say that so what's a little bit hard is when I sell in groups sometimes, so when we figured it up, it was like just over 3,000 horses went to homes. Like what we send to the border versus what I can rehome is a huge, and there are people that just don't believe it. Like I mean, I've had people just flat tell me there's no way. And I'm like, if you watch my videos, I mean, every week my husband's dropping off anywhere from 50 to 60 horses a week that you can see, and we advertise them. And so it's just hard. And it's also hard to make a living in the horse industry. That's most people's dream. And there's a lot of people that are just really bitter that I have made a living, to where we actually are in a little bit better position. I am. I mean, and it's afforded my husband the ability to get back to doing the cattle and to be able to do that in a very like we can just pay cash when we go type thing, and it's really amazing. But at the end of the day, the equine industry doesn't realize, like, it's just crazy to me to look at the amount of volume that I can sell in horses and how many people out there want to own a horse.
You're not selling them to the equine industry. That's the thing that maybe they don't realize. Like, these are people who want to be in the... I would assume most of your buyers, this is their first horse, maybe their second. A lot of them. They're a trail rider. Maybe they have an acre lot in Tempe, Arizona or something, and they just want to go ride a horse somewhere. Like, this isn't... what's
really cool is in 9 years, I've gotten to where now, we had 2 horses last year that we sold to traders. Took them home, they put some time into them, and one of those horses brought 60,000 and the other one brought like 80. And they just came from me. Like they
just happened to be bred well, and you found them?
Yeah, they were registered and a little bit younger, and they were pretty sound. One of them, a guy had a heart attack, and his wife just sold the horse at the sell barn because she knew nothing, and I think he team sorted, and it was a young like cutting horse that he was going to sort on. Yeah. The other one was a horse that a lady was dating a guy, and he kind of got into reining horses, I think, to, like appease her. And then when they broke up, he really didn't have any idea. So he was like, can you just take the horse to the sell barn? Well, people don't always realize that horse sells in the local cow sell. Like, hey, do you guys sell horses? Yep. They take it to the cow sell. And that's kind of what's neat. A lot of the horses we get, so we have cow buyers, like my husband and his brother, and, we have a couple people that work for us that make sells, and they make several sells a week. The best horses we get run through cow sells because, like I said, they're not horses that were traded on. They're not horses that had been through somebody's program and failed, or a trader bought and now they're just trying to dump it. They're horses that people genuinely are just needing to get rid of, and they're the best. I mean, so we have a great group of horses that way. And then we get a lot of young horses that people just didn't do right by, and that's a whole other topic. But the whole dynamic of the equine industry, I feel like sometimes like the foundation is the kill horse industry. Like if you don't have that foundation to where every horse has a value, horses become cheap and free. And when horses become cheap and free, people don't realize that people will obtain a horse and then realize really fast that like they are very expensive. They are not cheap or free. I mean, shoes are $125. You know what I'm saying? Like teeth, it's $150. People, I can't tell you how many people sell horses that don't know their teeth need to be floated. Like I've bought horses from people, and, just standing there talking to them, and they're like, oh, thank you so much. We don't know what's wrong with it. Like it just started doing this weird thing and running sideways. And like, I'll reach in there and be like, yeah, well, his teeth are pretty bad. And they're like, oh, well, I hate that. I guess we better buy one with good teeth. And you're like, and it just seems like that's the thing that I think people that are born and raised in this don't see. I had no idea when I grew up at the racetrack, worked for Equiglobe, ran barrels. I had no idea that this parallel universe was out there of people that own horses that have no idea They have no idea. I can't tell you how many horses we buy that their problems were super simple. Like, we'll buy it. It's a gaited horse. It's fantastic. I have a customer in Arizona who, has to have a gaited horse. That's all they want. They'll pay really good money for it. But this horse is super back sore because the guy that owned it from nowhere, Louisiana, was literally using a feed sack for a saddle pad. And that sounds, if you don't believe me, just go on YouTube and look up Mamu Chicken Chase. And you will realize this is a thing. And they will be like...
We also live in a world where some weird dude with a handlebar mustache and a leather vest has like a bunch of tigers and is world famous for it. So...
I have been compared to him, and I've been compared to Trisha Paytas. Somebody told me I was Trisha Paytas of the horse world, and I'm like, am I that problematic? I might be that problematic.
I'm not seeing it.
Me?
I'm not seeing the problems. I guess you need to turn it up a little more because it all seems logical to me.
That's the
where's
problem.
The problems?
I think that in the horse industry, it starts with, you mentioned slaughter, and 9 out of 10 people that don't know a lot about the horse industry go...
So explain it. Explain why it is so important and why it's key to get slaughter brought back to the United States.
We have to.
Yeah, and explain exactly why, though, so people understand, because that's a foreign concept to most of even people who rodeo. Like, I've grown up and always had horses, own horses, will always own horses. I don't know dick about the slaughter industry. I know nothing about it.
So
I'm not going to pretend I do.
The problem that we have right now, so like we were living in Louisiana, and I moved my business to Texas because of the state laws there. They went to where if you sell more than like 5 animals a year, you have to have a dealer's permit. Well, I told them to kiss my fucking ass. So they fined me $13,000, and I told them, this is as good. This is a civil matter. This is as good as the paper it's written on, and I'm going to go to Texas where they're not going to tell me that. But you also have to remember that like the Carter Fitzgerald law that they're trying to pass that was going to stop equines from being able to be transported to Mexico to slaughter, one of our, like the senator or whatever from Louisiana is who was like the head of that bill. So they're just really I don't want to say an anti-agriculture state because like the racing community is great there. The rodeo community is great there. But I mean, again, I think that cow buyers and kill buyers in the horse industry are kind of the foundation to the market. I mean, livestock have to have some value or they become cheap and free, and they're anything but cheap or free to maintain.
So the reason that there needs to be that is so that there's an underlying value on what a 1,000-pound animal is.
Absolutely, because of the amount of suffering that happens at the hands of people who just do it on accident.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've been to a sell barn and people are dumping off horses that are body scores of 1, and I'll be like, wow, and they're like, yeah, I really hate it. Like, we turned them out with the cows and just kind of forgot, you hear the most atrocious stories that you're like, how do you turn your horses out? But like you said, just go from Fort Worth to Tulsa, Oklahoma on back roads and look at the amount of horses that, honestly, you want to pull in their driveway and just be like, hey, will you sell me that horse? And people always have an excuse. Like this is also what sucks is like the way the rescue, that Scarlett's Legacy rescue got away with it for years was there's a mindset that kill buyers are bad guys and that when they obtain horses, they don't care about them. And so when people would adopt horses from her, body scores of 1, and she finally would get rid of one, and they would never call in the Humane Society because
they thought she was the white knight who rescued it.
She rescued it. But some of the horses that she had bought from us, that she had fundraised for, the pictures from my facility versus her facility were hundreds of pounds different. And I mean, this is a lady that's doing this who claims to love, but I mean, it's mental illness. Like I said earlier, I think a lot of people who get into rescue sometimes really have something wrong and it makes them want to go save stuff. I don't know why. I just find a common denominator, even in dog rescue.
It's a psychological phenomenon. Everybody's got white knight syndrome. I mean, they do for very different reasons. It gets real psychological, but you've got people who do that for pretty much everything, right? There's a group of guys who will log on to the internet and pay this girl on OnlyFans hundreds of dollars a month to try to make sure she gets to go to the college that she wants to.
Right.
He's a white knight.
Yeah, I mean, I have women that do it for us. Like
it's for everything.
It is for everything. And what I can say though is like, okay, so the majority of horses that go to slaughter genuinely do need to go, and that's what people don't understand. Like for me, when we get a load of horses in, I'm able to sort through them. These horses are premium quality. I'm going to price them for I mean, they're going to make thousands of dollars a head profit. These right here, they're just going to make a couple $100 a head profit. These right here need to go to slaughter. They just do. They have heaps. They're just going to be a liability, a vet bill. They are not going to go to
and
somebody.
No quality of life, and I think that's an important, probably the most important factor, right?
Absolutely. There's no quality of life left. I mean, but the same society that doesn't want slaughter is the same society that will keep their 30-year-old horse alive in their backyard, the body score of 1.5, and it's been foundering, but they'll pay the money to keep it on isoxaprine and keep it alive.
Well, but you see people do this with dogs and cats all the time.
Absolutely.
I'm like, you people are insane. Like, you see these people. I have an employee. They're like spending every dime they can to try to keep this fucking like 80-year-old dog alive. And I'm like, why are you doing that? First of all, it makes no sense financially. But second of all, that dog doesn't even know who the fuck you are anymore.
No.
And it's in pain and it's suffering nonstop. But because you're a sentimental pussy, you can't put the dog down.
The sentimental pussy part of this is the worst thing. Like, we laugh all the time about Karens with cookies. So sell barns have got to where everything has to have like super free choice hay because people are going to be there and take pictures. We have a filly right now that's dying. She's probably not going to make it. I'm probably going to have to shoot and bury this bitch. And I hate it because she's a fantastic horse. Like, she didn't do this. She went to the sell barn like a body score of 1. She's like probably like a long yearling, maybe early 2-year-old, part Percheron big mare. Gonna be real big if she ever makes it. But she's the body score of 1. I mean, somebody let this bitch starve to death.
Yeah.
And took her to the sell barn, and she gorged herself on hay. So by the time she comes to me, she did not need hay. She needed to be standing at the sell barn in a pen with nothing. But sell barns can't do that because there's going to be an animal activist there with a camera, and they cannot wait to take a photo of an emaciated horse standing in a pen. And that's all the narrative they need for people all over the country to say, that's animal abuse. Why don't you have hay in front of it? Well, the reason is because refeeding syndrome. And now this filly stood overnight at the sell barn. You know, we purchased them and the cattle. By the time they sorted them, loaded her the next morning, she stood on hay, gorged herself where she's had nothing. By the time she gets to me, she's fully impacted, and she's a $1,200 vet bill, and my dumb ass pays it because she is a good girl. It's not her fault that somebody starved her to that point. So the problem that we see is not with the kill buyers. It's genuinely, there's people out there that shouldn't own horses. And I'm telling you, the cheaper horses are, the more likely they are to end up in the hands of somebody that obtains a horse that has no business owning one.
Well, that's what's so great about the horse market right now, at least on the high side, which I will obviously admit, we don't buy horses unless they match a certain criteria for a very specific thing. Otherwise, we're just not going to look at them, but that's our business. That's a totally different thing that you're doing.
And you'd be surprised how many of those horses I get. You'd be surprised how many people. But it's in the numbers. It is not that I am like a genius and I can go find, and I tell people, everybody calls me and wants Scamper, okay? Because
she got him from a kill pen.
Right. Clayton, New Mexico, came out of a feedlot, but they get it home, and it's not NFR Scamper, it is feedlot Scamper, and it might buck you off, and they are mad. I literally have a buyer's guide that I have written over 9 years, and it's just paragraphs. There is a paragraph in my buyer's guide that says, please remember that these horses were obtained at public auction, and the only viable information I have is whatever was passed to me by the previous owner, and it very well may be a fucking lie. And it says it just like that. It may be a fucking lie. So please evaluate the videos for yourself. If you don't know what you're looking at, enlist a professional, because the only thing you can take to the bank is what's in the live video in front of you, which that is how I got monetized on Facebook. Ironically, because they're completely against selling animals. But 6 years ago, I was like, you know what? I cannot stand the kill pen rehoming bullshit where they tie a horse to a fence, take 4 photographs, put a price on it, especially when they're $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I mean, I see kill pens that they all do it. I mean, I have horses priced that high. We just don't put ship dates on ours. Like, I have enough decency to be like, okay, obviously this thing over here for $5,000 is not going to ship to slaughter. But that $850 one is, you know? So we've just put ship dates on the lower quality horses that we don't want to feed forever. The better quality ones, they don't have ship dates. But we started doing all of our videos live so people could see in live time. There's no editing. Like, if it bucks somebody off, I mean, my Percheron did it. Of all the things, he had come from the Amish. He had never been loped. Jess lopes him off bareback. It's scared the piss out of him. And he bucks her off on live video, and he's like the biggest kid broke. I mean, I would have sold him to anybody. I was shocked. He had never been rode bareback. He definitely had never been asked to lope bareback. He was just broke to drive. And anyway, he bucks her off on live video, and we all get breaks her tailbone. I mean, and it happens live. But that's what people need to know, is that horses aren't perfect, and that horses that go through sell barns, you never know what you're going to get. But how we got monetized on Facebook was I just spent so much time live that I got into the gaming community. So I got monetized basically as a Facebook creator, and they allowed stars, which stars are something that we make several $1,000s a month off of star revenue. And it's like where people tip me for the videos I make. Fantastic concept. Then we have a group, and the groups were designed for Facebook gamers to like be able to have people pay to be part of their group so that you could ask questions like, how do I get past level 14 of whatever?
You should know, you're at the convention. Level 14 of what, Tara?
No, listen, when I tell you that I realized very quickly that I was like, well, first of all, I'm extremely outnumbered. And second of all, I don't even know like these game names. I mean, like Ronda Rousey apparently does it, and she was like a speaker, and she was speaking on gaming, and I'm like, I need to go away from here because I don't know. They break out these masks, and they're giving everybody, so they give you these the metaverse, like the Oculus.
What are those things called, Ty?
Is it Oculus, right? Is that what it's?
VR headsets, something like that.
Yeah. Yes. They're white.
Don't something like that. You know exactly what it is.
Come on now. I told him we're taking.
I don't know. Because there's multiple brands. There's Oculus, like
Oculus. So this was Facebook. So it was Meta.
Yeah. So actually, it wouldn't be Facebook. So it has to be Oculus.
It was Oculus. So they gave us like packages with like, and I'm like, I'm never going to use these. Like, when I'm so serious. So anyway, we ended up getting Facebook monetized because we were just live for hours. Like, we'll be in the barn. And so it asks you when you start like having Facebook revenue, like what is your demographic? Well, I was just thinking like, okay, kids don't buy horses. So like 25 to 65, right? Most of my Facebook monetization commercials are like whiskey and Viagra. So in the same breath, like we're obviously adult entertainment, but I mean, we say things in the barn, like we call it barn talk. We just let everybody know like things are going to be said in these videos. I see people sometimes saying about Yellowstone, about how like the language on there is like, oh,
so offensive.
I'm just telling you, if they're offended by Yellowstone, they don't need to watch any of our live videos. Like,
I guess you haven't watched an episode of The Gauge, or you wouldn't feel so inclined to bring this up.
So
we get
honestly,
destroyed for the cursing on this show.
Oh, well, I've tried to be relatively okay. I mean, I say the C word probably as much as anybody, and that's so. Here's the weird thing about what I do. Like, I firmly have brought thousands and thousands of people to Pro Slaughter, just to the Pro Slaughter platform, because I just don't think people have seen the amount of suffering that I see. People also don't understand that without the kill pen rehoming, lots of really good horses end up going to slaughter. So there's room for everybody in the horse industry. And I decided I just wanted to cut my niche out over here. We do live videos. We take professional photographs of kill horses, put it all online. My demographic is anything from trail riders. I now sell lots and lots of thoroughbreds and warm bloods. And we have a buyer in Florida who just gets lots of great quality English horses. And, you know, we buy those, and I get a lot of gated horses out of the East, and we make Billings in Kelowna, Iowa. So we get drafts and Amish horses, and the horse thing has just exploded. But how the Facebook monetization came is we just went live all the time, and we ended up on the gaming platform. And now I have to just do a reality Facebook show because I can't sell horses on Facebook. They don't allow it. So we just have to unload the horses, and people see what we unload, and then we're in the barn and we ride them, and we just basically show all of our behind the scenes.
And then what? You tell them to go to a website?
Yeah. It's just killpenhorses.com. So just really simple. And there's people, though, that no matter how much I do, they're never going to be pleased, obviously. I mean, we do live videos, so if the horse is, I mean, I can't edit that.
Right.
If it's not what I say it is, like, you can see. If you don't know, get a professional, watch the video. But we also take photos. I mean, like I said, my vet's there every Tuesday, and he's fantastic. He's actually a performance horse vet, and he just comes and does all the travel packs and vet checks and teeth. And we have an osteopath that comes. She's fantastic. She comes when the vet comes. They work together. And we have a farrier that comes. Most of the horses that we get, honestly, have problems that range from like just bad teeth to they haven't been shod correctly. Our biggest thing, though, is it's even hard for me. Like, I see so much suffering at the sale barns, and those horses almost have to go directly to slaughter because the animal rights activists have made it to where if we unload a load of skinny horses, we're probably going to lose one. I mean, you know enough about horses' stomachs to understand that when horses go to the sell a body score of 1, that's a lot of change.
Well, I mean, you'll have $1 million horse who looks to be in perfect health drop dead from something to do with a gut issue, and then sometimes they can't even diagnose why it happened. It's just one of those things that happens.
Oh, we've seen everything. I mean, I've seen
happens
horses
with cows too, but not as much.
I've seen horses have brain aneurysms. I've seen horses. I mean, I've seen everything in 9 years and thousands of horses. But the equine community as a whole needs to not only bring slaughter back so that the horses that genuinely need to go don't have to go to the border, stand, be shipped into Mexico, you know? And then once they get down there, like, we have no control over how it's done or how they're treated. And I'm going to tell you, in the summer months, it's hard because you're going to put 23 to 25 horses, you know, on a trailer and haul them to the border. They're going to have to unload, weigh, stay overnight because they have to wire us the money. You know what I'm saying? And then once we're paid, they'll release the horses to their driver. And then they have to drive thousands of miles down into Mexico to go be slaughtered when it could just be done here. And the only reason it's not done here, and it's a market. Listen, in Florida, people will tell you left and right that horses are being stolen. There's a lot of ethnic groups. I don't want to, like, say anything culturally wrong either, but I don't know, like, I know that a lot of, like, the Dominicans and Cubans and things, they love to eat horse. And you can Google and see where horses down there are stole left and right, and they just find the carcasses where people have slaughtered them, like, 3 miles down the road. So we could be selling horse meat here. It's revenue, you know? And then we could be doing our drug testing and having it done here to where the meat could be exportable from the U.S. to places that want to eat it. But people say, oh, nobody in America wants to eat it. Well, that's not true. You know how we know it's not true? Because they're slaughtering horses on the side of the road in Florida left and right, and they find the carcasses all the time from it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to eat it. I certainly don't want to eat a horse. I'm sure you don't want to eat a horse. But, yeah, there's people. The world is so big, this country. I mean, you almost have 400 million people here.
Right.
And there's such a divide. Like, there's cultural divides, like you just mentioned. But the people who are the problem and the people who actually affect the most change in this country come from very small areas that are very densely populated.
Right.
Look at LA, San Francisco, New York City. You know, if you look at any state that has a big agriculture, like Colorado, I'm from there, so it's a good example. There's 2 hubs that make all the decisions for the entire western state of Colorado, where all the ranchers are, the farmers, all the ag people. It's Boulder and it's Denver. And you have the same thing in California. You have LA and San Francisco making basically all of the voting decisions for that entire state, which then create these things. And then you have nobody from this is one of the things that drives me absolutely insane. And you're saying great, really intellectual things, which is, I think what we need is more people like that who can compete on these playing fields intellectually and bring this to light. Otherwise, it's not going to happen because you're just going to have these university, and then I'll let you say what you were going to say.
Nope, that's okay.
These people come and there's no opposition. There's nobody from this side of the aisle who's going to stand up against them.
They just don't see the amount of suffering. No. Like, it's so easy. Like, it's so easy to say, like, well, why can't we just, if we don't want it, just euthanize it and bury it? Okay, well, we have people that can't feed them, and a bag of feed is $13. So where are they going to afford the hundreds of dollars? Again, if we rewind here, my husband said, hey, don't mess up this, you know, selling these horses for me. Like, you know, we really can't pick and choose through them. Like, I mean, at that point, it was go left or go right. Like, you need to be all in or we need to stop doing it because there are people that don't make $500 a week. You know, he said, you know, if I get enough horses, I might make $600, $700, $800, $900 in a week, Tara. I can't, like, at that point, for us, that was enough money that it was worth it to just not. But, I mean, we both like to gamble a little bit, and we thought, you know what? I'll make some phone calls. We'll see what we can do. But I never knew the amount of suffering I was going to see. And it's genuinely not at my hands. It's not at my husband's hands. It's really not even at the sale barns. It's at the people who drop them off. And that's what people also don't want to talk about. And the thing is, we're slaughtering over 100,000 horses a year. So it's not a controllable thing. It's not 5. Like if it was 5 horses, we could go figure out the 5 people that did this.
Right.
But they're slaughtering anywhere from 100 to 150,000 horses a year.
Well, and those are only the ones that are being reported.
Reported. That's right, because there's lots.
Go to reservations and things like that. A lot of horses die on reservations and no one knows anything
Absolutely.
about it.
And so we had a problem with wild horses in Louisiana, and they were never wild. It got out that they were the Fort Polk cavalry horses, and they were the descendants. Well, first of all, the cavalry horses were geldings. They didn't have stallions. So how are these the descendants? And then as they started trapping them, they started realizing that a lot of them had microchips. Remember? Because Louisiana, you have to microchip to ever obtain a Coggins.
People just turning them out.
People just turning them out. And it just happened. There used to be free graze laws in the 80s, early 90s. And then when they stopped that, people got most of their cattle, but really didn't have the ability to catch all the horses. And they repopulated 1,500 horses running loose on the Army base. And we got a lot of flack, and I got a ton of hate and had major criticism because Jacob was enlisted to go help. And of course, people went crazy. People from all over the country went crazy about this because these are the horses that defended our country. Mm-hmm. But they didn't want to hear ever that, like, ma'am, that is a gelding and he has a microchip. Or, ma'am, that mare has saddle marks on her. Like, these are not wild domesticated horses. These are literally horses that probably are descendants from horses from when there was free grazing in Louisiana. Fast forward to now, people are just dumping them left and right because people are also afraid to take them to sell barns because there are now sell barns that won't. So this is another thing that bothers me. We're getting to where a lot of sell barns won't take in horses that probably need to go to slaughter because they don't want the stigma of having that horse in the back that gets down. You know, somebody wants to take a picture of a live horse, not dead, on the ground, suffering. Well, why didn't you shoot it? Well, ma'am, do you know how hard it is to get everybody to clear out of somewhere long enough for you to get a gun and shoot something without you know what I'm saying? Like, even us, like, when we have to put something to sleep, like, we don't want a bunch of people around. Nobody, I mean, some people can't handle that.
No.
But there's a video that circulates from us. Like, we sedated a mare. She came in, body score 1, yellow tags still on her, very clearly emaciated. I mean, she had heaves. Anyway, she got down. We couldn't get her up. She had gotten up on the concrete, and it was just a shit show. So I wanted my father-in-law to get the bobcat to help stand her. And anyway, a rescue showed up to pick up some horses, and they just absolutely freaked out. Well, we probably could have maybe helped her, maybe, if everybody would have got away and just let us try to stand her. But people freak out. Have you ever stood like a down cow or?
Oh, it's really difficult.
It's difficult. And, you know, the first couple times I saw it, like, it was gut-wrenching for me. I come from racehorses. So to watch them try to stand and down animal up, and then it's like falling out of the harness, and you have to, like, first of all, build a harness out of whatever straps or whatever.
It can support 800 pounds.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
And she was a big mare. So finally we just sedated her. They took and they're like, this is what happens in the kill pen. You're right. Sometimes that does happen. You're right. It does.
But it wasn't caused here.
It wasn't caused here, and it's not a malicious. That's a thing, like, people need to remember that some things aren't malicious intent on our part. Like, just like the filly right now, Dr. Hanlon gave her fluids. He's oiled her. He's done everything he can do aside from driving her somewhere and having surgery. She does have an impaction, and he said she's just way too thin to have that much food. And that's what happened at the sell barn. She just stood. She was one of the first horses to sell. They sell all the cows. The cows end way middle of the night. And my husband starts loading, so she stood all day and just gorged herself. Nobody meant for that to happen. Nobody, you know, now we have her. Tomorrow, hopefully she's pooped. If she hasn't, we're probably going to have to shoot her because I'm not going to let her stand around for days on end until she ruptures and it gets bad.
There's just really nothing you can do. I mean,
but this is the part that nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to say, like, wow, you're having to clean up the mess that happened at the hands of people who claim they love horses. They just want to say, like, kill pens are terrible places. Yeah, sometimes they really can be. And the truth is, they're designed originally for horses to come, unload, and be gone the next day. They really weren't designed to hold horses for a lot of time. So what I did is I just kept saving money until, I mean, I had nothing when we started this. I was beyond broke. Like, we were beyond in debt too from paying attorneys and trying to get out of that mess. And then you fast forward to now, I have saved up and I went and bought a facility. That's amazing. It was a stud farm. So it's got like 31 1-acre pens. They all have sheds. Once the horses sell, they all go into private quarantine. None of the fences touch. Like when you see my place, I attract a customer base that expect horses to be taken care of like racehorses when you see my facility, but it's still a kill pen. And kill pen shit still happens, and it sucks because people don't understand, like, it's also gut-wrenching for us. Like, we get talked about all the time about, oh, they starve horses. Oh, they abuse horses. Things happen in this industry that, like, I'm not proud of, but it didn't start with us. It didn't, like, if we have to shoot that filly, it's going to be hard. Like, one of my staff members is definitely a tree hugger, for sure. I mean, she'll have to go home. Like, she'll need, like, a emotional care day. This thing over here isn't going to be able to handle it because she's been taking care of her. She's not going to be able to handle it. So Dara and I will. And I'm hoping, like, we all hope and pray, but truthfully, is she going to make it? I mean, you know how bad colic is when it gets to that point.
I mean, any impaction, and especially depending on what age of the horse is and what its life has been. I mean, generally, if they've got an impaction, everybody will do the whole thing where you run your hands over its belly and do whatever you can to try to move that along.
Oh, well, we had the
But if you look at how intestines work in horses, you're not moving nothing.
No.
It's just the way it is.
And it's kind of neat because what I will tell you is from my background at my facility, what we have done that's really cool is we nerve a lot of horses that come in. We x-ray, and if they don't have big holes in their, like, navicular bones, we will nerve them. And we do it right there in the field, and we video it and show people. But we want to educate people. Like, if you have a navicular horse with navicular syndrome, it's not a death sentence. And in fact, you can nerve them and they don't lose filling in their entire foot. So they're not, I heard people say, oh, I don't want that because they lose filling in their entire foot. They're going to fall down. So we have tried over the last year to do, like, we castrate tons of studs, and we do it on live video and just show people nerving the horses. We do it. We cast them. And then we show people they still have filling in their toes, so most horses aren't going to trip and fall. Most of those horses come back.
A lot of them drag, though.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we've done some really cool ones and been able to have a lot of success. Now,
really? That's pretty awesome.
We've nerved probably 25 on, like, that you can go back and watch. We have some amazing successes, and we've had some that we nerved, and there was more complication, like the deep digital flexor tendon. You know, when the horse started walking correctly, it had a little more damage. It's, you know, that didn't nerve out. So we've had some that don't go great. But what I have also tried to educate people on is don't dump your horse at the sell barn. Sometimes you can invest a little bit of money and still have a really viable horse. And with the market as good as it is, honestly, I wish that Facebook would allow sales, because I think a lot of horses that end up in the sell barn that shouldn't, that's part of the problem. We see lots and lots of horses that people tried to put for sale. They don't know how, because you can on Facebook, and they went to Facebook jail, and they couldn't really have that either because they have a business, you know, guy. And that's another problem we're seeing is Facebook has stopped horses from being for sale on Facebook. And unless you just do that for a living, it will kind of hinder you being able to just market your one horse that you need to get rid of. So people are having to take them to the sell barn. But we see, I mean, there's a whole group of trail riders out there that know nothing about floating teeth or properly worming. And then there's some people that want to breed, but they have no idea what they're doing. So then they raise colts that are too big with pemphigitis and all kinds. I mean, we see the worst of the equine industry day in and day out.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing stuff that the rest of us just don't.
You don't have to see every day.
Yeah,
but I have to see it every single week because 60 horses come in, and there's something wrong with at least half of them.
Right.
And that's a problem. And that's what nobody wants to talk about. And that's what's disheartening for me, is to be trying to do something good. And then, of course, you get the, well, you buy it for $500 and sell it for $1,000, or you bought it for $800 and sold it for $3,000. But that shouldn't be a problem. And if I can do it, you can do it. And you shouldn't hate on me for making a living. In fact, we do the videos live. I would never, and I hate to say this because I love a lot of people within our industry, but I would never buy a horse from them. If you can't saddle it, and I know a lot of these guys are cowboys and have cowboys ride for them, if you can't saddle it and show me a video, I don't believe it rides.
Well, that's the number one issue with paying people to train your horses is the number one complaint. Anybody who puts a check in someone's hand to ride a horse is, well, they didn't ride the fucking horse.
Right.
That's just the way it is.
Well, I'm telling you, so a lot of the kill pens, if you look, they take videos of the horses standing in the pens because they're banking on pulling at heartstrings of rescues, of women that don't have a clue and are just going to, I don't want that. What I really want is for the horses to go into viable homes so that I don't have to recycle them. The first year was pretty good. The second year we got bigger. And by the second and third year, I started seeing a couple horses I had sold back in the kill pen. Yeah. Yeah. And mostly at the hands of rescues. Like a rescue fundraised for it, got it home, and maybe it was more horse than they could handle. And they'll take them back to sell barns. It was insane. So that's where I became problematic because I wanted to tell on them. I'm like, this is supposed to be a rescue. Well, then you make enemies out of some pretty big rescues that have a pretty big following, and it's game on. But my following has grown. But what I've tried to do in it's been 9 years that I've been doing this. 9 years. And I'm telling you that what I've tried to do is create to where horses can go from the kill pen into good homes, and that you see a live video of that horse. So there's not a lot that I can cheat. Like, I can't cheat much, and you're allowed a vet check before it leaves my property. So if it fails that vet check and you don't want to pay, you can do something different with it. You can find somewhere for it to go. We even let some people are really decent. I have swapped some horses around for people that a horse was supposed to be 8 and it mouthed 12. Well, that lady didn't like it, and I've tried to, but she was nice about it. But I've had some crazy fucking people, man. You have to read my buyer's guide.
Oh, I'll give us a copy. I'll absolutely do it.
Oh my God. When you read it, you're going to, like, let's just for the sake of a good laugh, people have said, like, why would that even be in there? And I'm like, okay, let's see. You are responsible for picking up your animal and for transportation. That is not included in the price. Who would have ever thought you had to explain that to someone? So then we have some that are like, evaluations are done as a courtesy, but please remember that whatever information they came from the sell barn with is probably a fucking lie. Like, I underlined fucking, like, it's a lie. So please evaluate the video in front of you. And if you don't know what you're looking at, please enlist a professional. Because I have people that'll be like, well, I've never owned a horse. It looked good to me.
Yeah.
I've literally had people get horses home. This is what's really good. There's a whole paragraph in here. Lady, it's happened more than once now. It's happened twice. Buys a horse, gets it home, it unloads, and she calls me and says, this is not the horse I thought I purchased. And I'm like, ma'am, like, if you go to my website, like, they have photos, videos, like, you can't really mess that up.
It's so interesting to hear how these transactions goes with horses. It sounds like you're buying a car from, like, Carvana or something.
Oh, yeah, because, like, I mean, it's pretty simple. Like, you can see right here. I
asked for the blue Camry. The fuck?
Yeah. So literally you can see, like, they have photos and then a YouTube video. So it's really hard. Plus they have sell barn tags. So the one lady is like, well, I really wanted the other one, so I'll just go ahead and pay for it. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to return the wrong horse. And, like, once it gets back here, I'll sort it out. It died. She calls me the next morning. It died. And I'm like, well, you own it. It never died. She was trying to get... Yeah, like, you wouldn't believe this stuff. We had a group chat one time. There's a whole video on it. I got added to a group chat, and it was a group of women trying to buy horses from me and figure out how to charge them back on their credit card. Because in their mind, we're a kill pen, and when they buy these horses, I'm going to take the profit from these horses and buy more horses to kill. So in their subjective morals, they had decided they are going to buy.
So no credit cards anymore, right?
No, I take credit cards. It's really, really hard to do that. I mean, but I will tell you that I do have in my buyer's guide, and luckily with Texas, it's a felony. Yeah. It's theft by deception. So, like, I can have you arrested. And I've had to do it.
You don't even have to do anything.
No, I've had to do it more than once. Like, have people arrested because they've bought, like, 1 or 2 horses, got them home, charged them back on their credit card, and that's always, oh, well, I mean, I didn't want him to use the money to buy more horses to go to slaughter. That's not how that works. I have a child that's 3. She's expensive. You have kids?
2.
Oh, yeah.
More expensive than 1.
Yeah. So you totally get it. Boys or girls?
Boys.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think they're harder to keep alive. They're, like, super rambunctious and stuff, but girls are
my second child, don't know how he's alive.
Yeah, they always say it's that second one. I just have one, and she is fire, man. literally on live video the other day, she tries to go streaking by, and we're just trying to like duct tape the clothes on the 3-year-old's body so that we don't have like some kind of weird.
Yeah, you'll give up at some point.
It's bad. Sheena. It's bad. Like, we just try to like duct tape the clothes on her and pray that she doesn't streak across a live Facebook video, because she's a lot. I mean, and that's what I was telling them earlier before you came in. She had vaccine-induced encephalitis at 4 months old. So some of this, like, I fell down some rabbit holes and stuff and started seeing where people blame.
Oh, so that's how you started talking to my sister Paige.
Yeah, actually.
I bet it is.
Yeah. And you know what? I love her. And you know what I love about her is just that with her company, she's totally into the benefit of the horses.
That's the only reason she does it.
It has nothing to do, like, I'm sure that there will be people that are like, Paige, she's a kill buyer. They have kill horses. But Paige is so good about being for the horse. Like, she is 100% for the horse. Like, we buy her product. I keep it on hand.
Oh, the thing is it's legit. It's
it is
really a great product. Listen, and she came up with that all on her own. She
did a fantastic job. And we see a lot of horses from Louisiana. Like I said, it never freezes down there.
Right.
So a lot of parasite issues that, I mean, look terrible. They've Panicure power packed them. They still didn't really pick up.
Right.
You can put them on that product and they do amazing. And I have companies like that.
It's a relatively quick turn for being a homeopathic supplement.
It is. It smells great. Have you ever tasted it?
No.
Okay, well, we eat
everything.
All
about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It smells fantastic. It's a trick, though. Like, I have licked it and then been like, oh.
Yeah, you don't want to eat herbs of any kind.
I do. We've all had a little EPM super dewormer. But I love that product. And that's one thing I love about your sister is that she's just for the horse. Like, it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with how big my following is. It's that there are horses at my facility that need her product, and she stands behind. And there are companies like that. There's a bit company, No Hit Bit. My customers are all relatively new to horses. And those people will answer questions that other companies, like, there's lots of great bit makers. But that company, their customer service is unbelievable. They make a squirt bit that we made for a little calf horse that we have. We've got a couple of calf horses that we've sent down the road that do fantastic. We've got one that we own that's kind of been there, done that. He went to Fort Worth when the finals were here. And I mean, we have some really cool horses and they came out of the kill pen. And like, really? I don't go crazy, because I also don't want to lead people to believe that is a guarantee.
Not the rule.
No, it is such an exception. Yeah. And we're buying thousands of horses for me to end up with those.
Well, all horses, that's the thing. And people who buy or have raised a lot of horses, you find out even the best bred horses, it's still rare.
Yeah.
It's less rare now because the breeding's getting so dialed in, but even still,
well,
you can have the horse that you spend $100,000 on that's bred to the 9. It's like, you know what? I don't think I want to do this. I'm going to be a dink for the rest of my life.
We get them. And I said the other day, you can always tell when there's a genetic malfunction that's not in the 5-panel test when you start getting offspring by certain sires in the kill pen over and over. There's a couple.
Would you ever say which ones?
No. If
I guessed one, would you?
Sure.
Accept it?
Yeah.
It's not a guess. You already told Riley. She already knows. She told me.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, but it's different. Like, if you have a sire and all of a sudden you're like on your 25th horse that is by a specific sire, and most of them come to you and they're like, we don't know what's wrong. It's back sore. It bucks. Sometimes it acts like it ties up. But we've pulled hair. It doesn't have PSSM. Like, all of a sudden you start realizing, like, there's something going on there that is not, like,
genetics are a huge factor.
Right. And I think some of them are great, especially if they're with a smart enough horseman to feed them correctly. But like, we get a lot. We've had close to 30 by one sire.
What sire? Just tell me.
I just know that those people, I've seen them like rip people apart on the internet.
Do this and say it. Oh, then I was going to guess that.
Yeah.
Everyone would guess that.
Yeah,
just
probably.
So you know.
Yeah, probably.
Everybody's had one, and it generally didn't work out.
Buck them off or flip over?
That breed, and you already know, if you're listening to this and you're a barrel horse person or you got a reject one you tried to rope on, you got bucked off by one of those sons of bitches. I got bucked off by one. Two of them.
And another thing is, we see a lot of...
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
you don't even see a lot of those around anymore, though.
No, but I think that's why. I think that they were tough. Like, if they made, they made. Like, so one of my favorite sires out there, I love... like firewater flit horses. And I see people that will do this, though. And this is not the horse we're talking about. This is not the bad sire. But I see people that will have like a grandson of Firewater Flit, like out of some kind of mare, and it will be bad. And then they want to generalize Firewater Flit. And I'm like, you do realize that very few people have actually got to ride a Firewater Flit, and they're fantastic.
Well, yeah, but you just have to look at how far removed we are from when he was a thing.
That's right.
You get a few generations away, and you're not going to have unless they had a bunch of straws
But
from
we
him, and
get-
they didn't back then.
But I see that, like on my page, like I have one right now. He is by a Firewater Flit son, and he's out of a Lane's Lannister Dash to Fame mare, like Lane's Lannister on top, Dash to Fame on bottom. Really good bred. And there will be people that'll be like, Dash to Fame or Firewater Flit. I had one, and I'm like, so that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like, oh, we've had 30 grandsons of a certain sire. Like we've had
You're talking direct descendant.
direct, yeah, like either own sons or daughters or like out of a daughter, like out of a.
I mean, that specific one you were talking about was all the rage like 10, 12 years ago.
And they're
in
gritty.
The fraternity world.
That's the thing. Like I will say that some of the ones we've had, we've been able to like nail down a feeding protocol, and they've been okay, but there's something to that. You know what I mean? And then of course, people can say what they want about me, but there are some really high end individuals in the industry that I've had multiple horses through the kill pen that they've sold. Multiple. And at what point do you not start to realize like, what? Like, come on now. Like, you've sold enough horses.
Oh, it's...
I mean, when you get 5 or 6 or 7 that come through with the same brand on them, you're like, what the heck? Like, how does it keep happening? Like,
well, because there's dirty aspects to horse selling. There always has been. You know, that's why being dubbed a horse trader is like the worst thing you could be called.
You know what? I want to take the stigma out of that. Let me tell you something. You know what I love about horse traders? You sell a lot of horses?
No.
Okay. When you pull up to my house, they're all for sale. I will sell you the dirty, rotten sumbitch that's in the front pen, and I will sell you the good one that's in the barn. The only difference is the price tag. You know what I don't want to buy from? I don't want to buy from individuals that are trying to compete and win. Some of them do it and do like futurity trainers. They have to sell them. Like those horses have
They have to sell their own because they're busy with someone else's. But
well, and even a lot of times, like if you have owners, like Jacob and I, Corbin Pinion had a couple for us and did a great job. Like Corbin did fantastic. Like we've sent some horses. He hauled them. He did fantastic. Like we've dabbled in the barrel horses. I would probably have more of them. And we've talked about it. Like, I'm getting to where I need tax write-offs. Like, whoever knew, let me tell you, when my accountant was like, listen, we need to spend money. I was like, it's a foreign concept in the horse industry. When my accountant is. And I'll tell you what's really funny is.
You got to make sure you have the right accountant, though, because that's a tricky, slippery slope.
It is.
If you've had the wrong accountant, they say, hey, spend everything you got. Well, you're only getting a tax credit on the spended amount. You're not actually dropping.
Yep.
Your revenue.
And so I actually
they don't tell you that sometimes.
Nope. But I do donate some horses that like I really liked that didn't home. Like I'll donate them to rescues and get that, and we can. I mean, so I try to do a lot for the horses. But one thing I can tell you that's really, I don't know, kind of crazy is it's just a completely different place that I've ever been. Like, and the older I get, the more I appreciate it. Like I'm gonna be able to retire. Like I'm not gonna have to do this forever. And my dad still trains racehorses. You know, he had a heart attack in March and was like saddling horses in the paddock the next week because he didn't really have.
Well, that's the terrifying truth of horse training, right? There, like you're an anomaly. Obviously, like a person like Clinton Anderson's an anomaly, or you know, there's lots of anomalies. But like me, for instance, the only skill I had up until I was 20 years old was training horses, and it wasn't going to work out. So But
you know what I love about somebody like you? Look, I mean, like, you didn't just stop. This is, so, obviously, with rescues and stuff, like, I've suffered a lot of hate, and people want to hate you when you start to do anything outside of the box. And I'm going to tell you this. I was a terrible human being in my 20s.
We all were.
I was a terrible...
And if you say you weren't, you're lying to
I was
some
a
degree.
horrible fucking human. But let me tell you, also, I was broke, and I was miserable, and I was unhappy, and I was trying to be part of an industry that you're nobody if you don't have money. You ever feel that way, like in the horse industry?
Not anymore, but I grew up feeling... So it's so interesting, right? Because one of the things that I do in the show is the things that I say, I'm not trying to say them for world champions.
Yeah.
You guys don't need to hear it. It's for all these. There's millions of kids out there, thousands, whatever it is, in the specific demographic that they need somebody to tell them that there's a way to get through life.
Absolutely.
And if you grow up and your dad, your mom is a horse trainer and you live impoverished, it just happens to some people, right? Yeah. No matter how hard they work or how great of a trainer they are, it's just sometimes money just slips through their fingers no matter how much it is.
You know
and
what,
they can't
though?
make it work.
So for my dad, the way he grew up, like my dad wants to live to where he has no debt. Like he just wants to pay for things cash, and that's great. And he sleeps at night because he doesn't owe anything, and that's great. But it takes money to make money, and we're just now, after 9 years of this, getting to where, like, I'm on a cash-only basis. If I send somebody to a sell for me, I can wire the money the next morning. Like, that's a foreign concept in the cattle industry or in the horse industry. That's amazing.
Well, it is, yeah, unless you're the person writing all the checks to everybody else.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because you get into, like, this whole dynamic of everybody attaches their worth to what they can do in the horse industry. It's such a weird concept.
I have some really great advice that was given to me, and I want to give it to anybody listening to this. Listen to me. You're never going to go broke taking a profit. Ever. And if you built one, you can build another. And I wish that somebody had told me that, because I went through a lot of time in my life to where we all hold on to horses too long because it's the best one. Like when we think it's the only one. Like I did that with my barrel futurity horse. Like he was fantastic. And when I ended up selling him, I sold him for quite a bit of money, and then I bought a couple, and my dad is the one that was like, sell them. I sold a couple after that I had exhibitioning, and when you drop the hammer, I didn't have the ice water in my veins. I didn't have whatever it took to really get them there, but they were good horses. And the best advice I was ever given is you don't go broke taking a profit, and that's what we live by. Like I live in numbers. Like the reason that there are horses that leave me to horse traders, like I have horse traders that actively shop, call me, hey, what do you have for me? Is because, yes, I'm going to mark horses up, but I'm going to sell 50 horses this week. And they're all going to bring a little bit of a profit. And as long as they turn a profit, I don't go broke. And let me tell you, the worst mistakes I ever made was thinking, if it gets a little bit like, somebody offered 15, but it might be worth 20. You know what I'm saying? Like, I promise if you built one, you can do it again. And if you don't, it's just because, and that's another thing. People get good bred horses and they don't work out and they start to take it personal. They're not all going to be a winner. But
and it's so subjective. Just because the top fraternity trainer was winning out at the fraternities, you gave them $100,000, but you just don't have timing, or you just don't have that thing. Mm-hmm. It's not the horse's fault. It's your fault. But nope. You also shouldn't feel bad about it. You rolled the dice. Listen,
there is also, with the way that team roping and the way that barrel racing is set up, and especially a lot of the non-pro events, those horses that used to not have a lot of value have value now. So I've heard somebody say, oh, it's not going to make. Yes, it is. It's not going to make a 1D horse that you can go to the NFR on, but it might make the world's best 3D horse that Susie over here can just enjoy. And here's the thing.
And go to the right barrel races and still win $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000, $12,000.
Exactly. And those horses have value now. And so what I'm hoping the horse industry really starts to see is that some of the lesser quality horses have a lot of value to the right people, but you have to appreciate those people. Because what we're lacking right now is a lot of people want to sell to the $60,000 customer, and they take for granted how many people out there with 10,000. I sell lots of barrel horses, and I'm somebody that I used to run barrels. We still go when I have time. I actually recently went to a team sorting clinic. Now I'm just dabbling. I get to go just do whatever I want and just go and have a good time, and it's fantastic. I have Friesians. I have Imperial Friesians. They're spotted. My dad thinks they are the ugliest. My dad is like, what the fuck? I love them. So I recently imported a leopard Friesian. It's a whole thing. My dad is just mortified. He's like, you could have bought racehorses with that, that kind of thing. But I just get to have fun. I never got to own horses just because I loved them. And I remember when I was little, flipping through magazines and seeing Friesians and knowing, I'll never be able to afford that. Now I have 9, and they hate them. The girls that work for me are like, they are crazy. They're not. They're just so intelligent, and they're like one human horses. It's really kind of cool. But
and that's something you have to tell people, or you don't have to tell them, but it's at least good advice, right? It's okay, and this may be a little contrary to what you were saying, because you were able to make it work in the industry. But again, you're the exception, not the rule. Mm-hmm. Same with me. I did something different. I actually left to make money, and then I came back to do all of this. And now, if I want to spend 5 figures on a horse,
you can.
I'm talking to my sister. Hey, let's look at these colts. We could actually buy badass colts and do something with them. But the only reason that we can is
She's
because
fantastic. Now, I have a girl that works for me that loves your sister, Ivy.
This is the sister I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Paige.
But I mean,
Paige could do it too if she wanted to.
Paige is fantastic. So I'm a Paige fan, but I know her, and I don't know Ivy, but I have a girl that works for me that just like thinks that she is. But everybody like has that person in whatever industry, and just I think that your sister is like super relatable, and she's made herself kind of a little bit like. She made a post, and like this girl that works for me comes walking the bar, and she's like fighting mad, wanting to like fight people over like something somebody said about her online, you know, because your sister allowed herself to be just a little bit more relatable. I guess she's maybe made the comment that maybe she didn't finish high school, and that she
didn't finish high school. Ivy didn't graduate. She dropped out.
Me too.
And we didn't have any money. And so for Ivy to achieve going to the NFR at the age she did, be a $1.5 million cowgirl before she hits 30 and been to the NFR.
Isn't that amazing,
going into
though?
Their 6 years in a row. I mean, that's just not something that most people can do. But so she is another exception, not the rule for people that are cut from similar cloths to us. But it's okay to drop the horse thing and leave.
Absolutely.
Go figure out a way that you can make your life work, and then you can come back.
Absolutely.
It'll always be here, and it will be here to invite you. And it's a lot more inviting on the Western side than it is as a whole, right? If you take the entire eclectic group of the horse market, like the rodeo-y type thing, the rope, the team roping, the barrel racing, it's a great more hobby. Accessible. It's a great hobby.
It's a great hobby.
If you know you're not going to be a world champion and you don't have money, don't kill yourself trying to figure out how to do it and go into extreme debt you could never recover from. Stop right there. Go figure out something to get to where you want to be. That's what I did, and it worked. And if a dumbass like me can do it, then anybody can. Like, you can set your pride aside and figure out how to get the life you want. That is something, might not be today.
And pride is a thing. Like, I had to learn in my late 20s that horses didn't have to win something to be valuable. And it took me a really long time. Like, now I sell horses every day that are going to go to lawyers and doctors and teachers. I get the call all the time, like, my husband and I are getting ready to retire. We've never owned a horse before, but we have 5 acres. And, you know, I also get phone calls from people that are like, hey, I want to start team sorting, and do you have anything that will kind of cut a cow, but I don't want to spend a ton because I don't know if I want to stick to this a long time. So I get all those phone calls, and it took me a really long time. And it's still, I have to hire people a lot of times that don't come from competitive backgrounds, because I have a lot of people. I had a boy one time come to work for us, and he's like, I don't want to ride the gaited horses. They're a piece of shits. And I'm like, oh, well, I probably make as much money off of gaited horses every year as I do anything else. And do I want one? I've kind of got to where I like Morgans and Missouri Foxtrotters. They're pretty dependable. Like, they're kind of the same all the time. Yeah. But he just was like, I just want to ride like the good ones. And I'm like, again, I make more money off gaited horses every year than I probably do anything else, you know? So the horse industry is very funny. It's very diverse, and I get to see it from all aspects.
Well, you're in just such a different place. You're servicing such a different clientele in a different market and dealing with different horses than like somebody like me. I just never been around it.
Yep.
I just haven't. I know the one thing that I know, and that's rodeo horses. So it's so interesting to know that that's out there.
It is out there. But I do think that in the industry, people need to start accommodating the amateur and the people. I'm serious. Like, there are lots of people that ask me for videos. Like, honestly, and we've joked about this, I could have a barrel racing group because there's so many people out there that are so thirsty. I joined and paid the full year. I mean, I'm not ever going to want to run barrels competitively again, but like the Take the Rein, what was it? The Joey Wargo and Jolene and Ashley did.
Oh, yeah.
I paid for the whole year just to support them because I was just so excited.
I'm glad they did that, by the way.
Yeah, because I'm telling you, I actually get phone calls from people that end up taking advice from the 17-year-old who wins at the play days just because that's all they know. Like, that girl won, so she must know what she's doing. But she's like, you know, for you and I, we would look and go, oh my gosh, like, she's in a Tom Thumb, and, you know, like, it's kind of sketchy. You know what I hope that makes sense.
No,
like,
I do, yeah.
But that's a lot of people's entry to barrel racing is like they go to the local play day and their kid wants to do that. So all they know is the person who's winning, and it's probably a 16 or 17-year-old rodeo queen.
Yeah, at those things.
At those things, absolutely. And then we have a whole industry of TikTok and Facebook trainers that are 17 that because this person is paying them, they think that
I'm just starting to discover this.
It's a thing.
That there's these Like, and you can tell that they're not on nice horses and that they're really not horse trainers. Like, you can look at their saddle and you can look at their set and you're like, okay, these aren't real horse trainers, but holy shit, she's got 150,000 followers on TikTok watching her ride a horse. It's
and I think
super interesting.
Absolutely. And there's been a misconception for the last couple of years. Like, I think a little bit out there, people assume that's me. Like, they're like, oh, what is she? I mean, like, she trained race horses and she kind of barrel raced, but like, what did you do to get this following? Mostly we're just super inappropriate in the barn all the time. And the girls that work for me and stuff are pretty wild and we just have a really great time. But we do try to educate people. Like, I do have a vast, like, toolbox of information. Like I said, we nerve horses. I mean, we do things that real horsemen can actually learn from and I mean, it's crazy. I get everything from professionals who will say like, wow, I didn't know that I could do that. Like we did Renovo, which is on some stifles, and we've done some horses that came to me that had performance records. Like we have a horse right now that Regal he is Reggie, Daniel Campbell and Pito, and had him. And both of them, I will say, when he came to the kill pen, both of them were like, he belongs to Shelly, a friend of mine, and Shelly like brought him back from the brink of death. You wouldn't believe. But both of those people called him like if he needs a retirement, and I will say that's amazing because I have some people that we've had a horse with their brand and called and they were like couldn't care less, and both Danielle and Pete both offered to if he needs somewhere to live. Like
right. Even
Pete was like, what do you want for him? Like, you want money? Like he deserves to. And I was like, no, he's actually we've done some women donated money to his care to help him get back like into tip top. Just so he can have a healthy retirement. It had nothing to do with performance. But there are women out there that watch all my videos, and then people get mad about that. They're like, if you can't afford to take care of them, listen, I'm not going to tell somebody that works hard for their money, I'm not going to block their blessing. Like, if they feel compelled to, like, make sure this horse has a great life and they want to pay for Renovo and, they've watched him compete in the past and they, are never going to run barrels, but they want to be a fangirl and help him, I'm going to let them. And that's another thing. It's crazy to me how many people get so bent out of shape about how somebody else spends their money. Have you ever noticed that?
But the people get so bent out of shape about everything.
About money in general.
Money is like the number one. You have people who want to just brag about how much money they have, or do the woe is me because they don't have any money, or be mad at you because you're making money off of something that, who else can make money off of this? And you're a monster for being profitable. That's the thing you really have to toe the line with social media and then being a business owner of any kind.
Have you ever noticed that the more money you make, the more money you spend, and it's like a whole different level of, right? Like, I mean, you grow up with nothing, and then you start making money, and then you realize how much money you spend to, like, maintain. Like, it's a whole...
Well, that's the hardest part about business, right? Especially if you're growing, depending on what the business is. But, I mean, the expenses just keep growing and growing and growing.
Absolutely.
You can't cut that much. You can't budget enough when you get to a certain level. Your only option is make more money.
Absolutely.
You can't budget enough.
Absolutely. And that's something...
You can just make more money.
When you said earlier, like, that you left the horse industry and then came back, I just want to say, though, but you hustle. Like, whatever you do, obviously, because now you've done this on the side. And that's something like, so people wanted to talk to me about, oh my gosh, did you see where all the apps, if you make over $600?
This is what I get so mad about. I know what you're touching on. You're so right. Like, oh, you can make money. I have people working for me telling me how I should be getting rich off crypto and NFTs. But I'm like, but you're working for, never mind.
Never mind.
Apparently it didn't work for you.
Right.
So
absolutely. And then the people that want to like be pressed, and I'm like, you realize that like before the threshold was $20,000. So like PayPal, if you made over $20,000 on those platforms. So I got an email
now Venmo, you're going to get a 1099 from Venmo now. So get ready for that.
But listen, this is what I'm talking about. It was $20,000 before. I do that in a week.
Yeah.
20,000. So now that it's 600, I'm like, well, I did that for breakfast. Like, so people out there that are like so pressed over the $600 rule.
Well, that's been the rule everywhere. So that's always been the case, right? So if you pay a subcontractor more than $600 in a year, you have to give them a 1099.
Absolutely.
That's been around forever. And now they just have put it on these money platforms.
These little money platforms. And the people that are super upset about it, like I had a message like on the way here from a lady that was like, ha ha ha, Biden's going to stick it to you. And I was like, ma'am, I just replied and I was like, ma'am, the threshold prior to this was 20,000. I did more than 20,000. I have to claim everything regardless. So it's just funny to me how you said, like, people are mad if you make nothing. People are mad if you make money. But I will tell you, the more money I make, the more money that we spent. Like, we've had to have accountants and, you know, the more you've had to grow, the more staff, like.
Well, and the more you have to watch the money, because the more people have their hands on the money, the more chances you're going to lose the money. So it really is more money, more problems. It takes the right kind of people to it just takes the right kind of people to have money. That's why not everybody can have money. It's just the way it is.
I believe that, because I'm going to tell you that it's, like, my life is way more stressful now than it was before. And I don't know. I think that in the community of horse trainers, though, it's crazy. Like, people like my dad, they just don't want to have debt. They just want to. Everybody has the right to have their own dream. You don't have to be a gazillionaire. You don't have to want to be a gazillionaire, and you shouldn't feel bad for not wanting that. Just like you shouldn't feel bad for not wanting to be a world champion rodeo. Absolutely.
You don't have to feel bad for what you want or what you don't want.
Is it ever weird to you in the horse industry? This is just me, because you know a lot of people are doing stuff. Is it ever weird to you, though, how like people base people's worth off their credentials? I've always thought that was very wild.
So here's even the weirder thing, right? So in rodeo, you've got everybody bases this person's worth off of what they've won, who they are, who they know. And then you've got all these other people who they feel like they have to compete with those people. And the only way they can do that is by having money and telling you how much money they've got. And that's the value they bring is, well, I've got money. You might have a gold buckle, but I've got money.
Yep. And that's where I think the Western community needs to find, because I'm telling you that I have made my living off of people that don't fit into either. They are not a world champion, and they are not buying a $60,000 horse. And I have made an entire life off of people that want to own horses. And a lot of them compete and want, and I'm only saying this because I just want trainers out there to know that more professionals are needed, but in a different way.
Hey, Ty, I got a nosebleed again. Can you grab me what happens when we get in heated conversations, apparently, lately. I had COVID for the third time. Oh, God. And ever since I recovered from it like 2 weeks ago, I've been getting nosebleeds.
Jacob gets nosebleeds.
The second podcast I've got a nosebleed.
Were you, did you have to go to the hospital ever?
No.
Oh, I was in the hospital.
No, and I wouldn't have gone. I would have died on the floor before I go to the hospital for COVID.
Yeah, well, I pretty much did. When I got there, my oxygen levels were 70. I was in the hospital 28 days.
Was that recently? That was a lot of paper towels.
It was
That's more than I thought. Thank you.
July to... At least I know that it's COVID and a nosebleed.
Well, it started, yeah.
This is where the inappropriate comes in. This whole time I've been trying to decide if you like are okay, or maybe if you like have an extracurricular activity you did before you got here. I'm sorry.
I've also heard that one.
Look at this. She's dying. She knows. Listen, we literally have to put adult supervision is needed on your children before you watch any of our videos. Like this thing over here has been to prison, and I'm just going to say it. We have a very diverse market. So like half the people that watch us, like I get messages from people that are like, we had a guy, you want to tell him? It's really crazy. This guy messages me and he's like, I just want you to know that Elizabeth has saved my life. And I'm like, how did she do this? I'm just like, CPR? And so he's like, I'm in the federal penitentiary and like we get like internet in here.
Yeah.
I stumbled.
They get internet in the pen now?
Yeah.
Like the right way.
Yeah. Oh. I mean, he stumbled.
He's stealing internet.
I don't know. He stumbled upon us. He literally said that he's like up for parole, right? Mm-hmm. He's up for parole.
Oh, and he's coming for you. You're going to be his wife?
He was like literally trying to figure out in his head like what he could do to get back in prison. Because he's not, I mean, for 15 years or 20 years, he's been locked up in there. So he's
doesn't know how to join society kind of thing.
No, and like from watching her, he's like got a whole new take on life. And he is like totally thinking, like when he's out, he is like going to work for a ranch and he just wants like the Western lifestyle. And it's all, he literally is
all
like.
All because of you.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I tell you like we're super diverse on Facebook. Like it's,
so you're going to make a cocaine joke and you thought it might offend me?
Yeah.
Oh.
I've been sitting here trying super hard. She knows too. I've been sitting here. I like a couple times you're, and I'm like,
no. Yeah.
That's why whenever you said about the banana bread,
yeah.
When you said about the banana bread earlier, all I could think about, oh God. So like I said, we have a customer that lives where marijuana is legal and she was nice enough to make us like cookies. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm from Oklahoma, so whatever.
Medical, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, so she makes these cookies, and I get migraines, so I guess she was trying to do a nice one and brings me these cookies. And, like, so I've eaten one, and I'm doing something. She walks in, and she's like, now let me tell you about these cookies. She's like, they are, like, THC cookies. Like, you need to be really...
Gonna jack you up.
And I'm, like, halfway through the second one. By, like, noon that day, I'm videoing horses, and I can, like, I don't know what's in these cookies now. Like, when you said about the banana bread, I'm like, should we tell him the cookie story? I am, like, so fucked up. I have to be carried. Oh, my God. When I tell you that everybody was so mad at me, I couldn't even finish videoing horses. I had to be carried, and my legs were, like, concrete. I told Elizabeth, don't touch those cookies. They'll give you concrete legs. She's like, what's that? And I was like, just
find out for yourself.
No, it was, I'm telling you, like, just now I know if my customers bring anything, we have to ask, like, what is in these? Did you make them? And this poor lady is like 70. I would have never in a million years believed
that she would do that.
Yeah. I mean, and she was like, well, listen, just like half a cookie because they're
potent.
I had already eaten one and I was like more than halfway through the second one. I am not kidding when I tell you I had to be carried. I had to be carried. I was like holding a horse and I was like, his emotions just feel so good. Like it.
Who hasn't been there?
Well, I hadn't before that day. And I'm just telling you, I haven't had the balls to go back.
Well, to answer your question, no, I do not have a cocaine problem.
Well, no,
I don't know where
COVID.
you get it, but there's been a few days over the last couple of weeks that probably could have given me a cocaine problem.
I'm just telling you that, honestly, my husband, since he had COVID, has nosebleeds. So once
I
you
mean,
said that,
so
I get it.
I'm that unlucky person who got all three variants. Mm-hmm. I got the first one at the NFR in 2020. And then I got the other one in July, the Delta, and they diagnosed it as that. And then this new, like...
I had Delta.
This new, like, wimpy bitch version of COVID that's just like a snotty nose for a month. I got that. But for some reason,
it's
like,
just, yeah.
If the temperature changes, nosebleed.
Well, I had Delta, and it did almost kill me. And
it was rough. Delta was the rough one.
I remember laying in the hospital, like, on a high-flow ventilator on 100, and they were, like, talking about, like, intubating me, or what do they call it? Intubating? And I just remember thinking, like, I'm going to leave a 2-year-old without her mother. Like, I have got to, like, I just remember being like, I have got to do something. And it hurt so bad to breathe. And I remember just, like, and, like, being in tears. And all I could think is, I cannot leave a 2-year-old little girl without her mom. Like, I just, I don't know. Like, as a parent, you get it. If you don't have kids.
I mean, the Delta one, it sucked. Like, I had, like, vertigo. I couldn't see for, like, 3 days. And it was not fun.
I still have some.
Yeah, I still can't taste food. Yeah. Right.
But I was in there from like the 18th of July is when I started having problems, and it was like the 25th of August whenever I was like finally just and I came home on oxygen. Like I came home on oxygen.
Yeah, it's funny. I got it the last week in July too, the Delta one. That's when it was like popping everywhere.
Yep. And I was in the hospital forever. And then I actually got it from I think I go and get massages because I get tension migraines. And anyway, I just know that I went to go in and they were like, yeah, like your masseuse is out or whatever. He's super sick. And then I saw on his Facebook later, they were like praying for him. And then like 3 days after that, and I had been to him the week before. So I think I got it from going to get a massage.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Up close and personal.
Yeah. But I didn't really think that COVID was like a man-made thing until I went to that convention. And they were like really trying to push like virtual reality and just, I mean, you have to remember that Facebook is like a multi-billion-dollar. Yeah.
They have so much control.
But I mean, they're really, really pushing virtual reality. I just really didn't think that was a thing. I still feel like a conspiracy theorist, except for I was like sitting there like up close and personal.
Well, you have such a huge population of people who just think that like the world sucks. Like
absolutely,
there's so many people who just look out the door, like these kids who live in the inner cities, or they're from like they live in their parents' basement. You know, video games have gotten really good lately, and you look at those graphics, and
absolutely,
man, just a couple more years, and I could have me a wife on that virtual reality who looks like Heidi Klum, and that's gonna be my life. Why would I unplug?
Yeah, they literally think that. I'm glad that you're like. So when I very first started talking to my husband about it, he was like, "Okay, like you've gotten into the cookies, haven't you?" Like he just really. It just
But they talk about it like openly. It's all over Facebook. Like if you see it, or they even talk about it on CNN and stuff.
But I don't watch the news. Like I am.
Oh, I have to.
I don't even so I don't even go to any like chat. Like I get on my Facebook business page and I have like Creator Studio. Do you have y'all need to monetize this.
I don't do.
The internet is wild. I still think I'm a conspiracy theorist. I still genuinely, I'm glad you at least know what metaverse is, because 9 out of 10 people I've said something to look at me like.
I mean, Fox News went bonkers on it when they announced that. If you watch Tucker Carlson at all, he was talking about it like mad crazy. And that's where I heard about it.
No, I literally said in a convention for Facebook creators where they pushed it, where businesses need to buy it and that we can just sit at our homes and people can have to buy this device to be able to come to your business virtually to buy anything. They think groceries should be like Instacarted.
You know where they're not doing that? they're not doing that shit in Russia and in the Chinese military. They're going to come fuck our shit up over here.
I'm telling
you.
We
have all these like skinny armed female-y men who haven't been outside at all. They're not going to be able to defend and protect.
No, I'm telling you, it was, whenever it was like, oh, well, if we just get rid of all the animals, like, it was, like, wildly agreed upon in that circle of people that... Let all the animals die? Yeah.
It worked for the dinosaurs.
Because nobody can abuse them. There would be no animal abuse if there were just no animals. That was their, like... So then you go from, like, kind of animal activists to, like, bitless people who still want to ride the horses to people that, oh, we shouldn't even ride them, to a whole... breed of people that just think that they should just be extinct because we should not use animals for anything. We are capable of not doing that.
I'm going to wipe that from my mind, my memory.
How do you think I felt?
I don't know. That's why you do what you do. I'm not doing it just for that reason.
Nope, but it's
very interesting.
But everybody needs to lobby to bring slaughter back to the... And we got really close. We got really close to bringing slaughter back here. There just wasn't, there wasn't money for them to actually, like, for the plants to... be able to, like, inspect everything. So we got close, but what is it, like, close but no cigar or whatever? That's the saying.
Close but no cigar.
Yep, and then now we're back on they're recently tried to pass, like, the SAFE Act, and then the Carter Fitzgerald thing. I mean,
maybe we should put out more videos just explaining it to people, try to get them to lobby for it and make it happen.
I do, and so, like, we're super pro-slaughter on my platform.
Have you reached out to any senators or congressmen?
You'd be surprised how many of them don't really, like, it's such a bag of worms. It's just, there's so many other things. Like, you would really be surprised how many people don't, they're like, yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
they're not going to touch it because their goal for being there isn't to affect change. It's to get paid from special interest groups.
So yes, I mean, yes, myself and a lot of my following have tried, and it's just not. And the worst part about it is the horses are what suffer, for sure. For sure.
I mean, that's the whole, like, if you're going to take anything away from this, it's like the whole goal is to prevent horses from suffering, which is why I think it's a good thing that you came on and we talked about it. And I mean, I wish you all the success because no one's going to do anything worth doing if you don't make a profit.
Right. Well, it started out in the right place. Like, I've told people, it started out, like, for the horse, but
it can still be for the horse if you make money. It means you can help more horses.
Well, at the end of the day, I realized even really legitimate rescues kind of have to do it in a retail fashion because you're only going to be able to fundraise so much money. So you have to have money coming in because horses are super expensive. We're not talking about like a object. We're talking about something that eats and breathes. And like I said, we have a $1,200 vet bill on a filly that came in starving and she gorged herself on a hay bale at the sale barn. And that's the next thing. Nobody wants to talk about any of that. Everybody wants to duck their head in the sand, and people do. I mean, I get a lot of scrutiny for animal abuse, and there is no abuse happening at my hands or my staff hands, but we have to clean up a lot of abuse.
No, there's no genuine, like, this is the definition of animal abuse. It's just subjective. Anybody can deem what animal abuse is at any given moment.
And every state is different. You know, like, here in Texas, you don't have to report diseases. In Louisiana, you do. So if you have a horse with, like, a reportable disease and you don't report it, you can be charged with animal cruelty there because you didn't report it to the state and have the state vet come, like, strangles is a reportable disease. So there's been people there that have gotten animal cruelty charges because they had strangles horses. Here, you just handle it. In Texas, you just handle it. You don't report it to anybody. In that state, you have to report it, and you have to have the state vet tell you how to handle it.
Right.
So it's very different. Every state's different.
Well, okay, I think we've solved all the world's problems.
No. I think we've created some. You know, people are going to listen to this and be like, there's no way. It's really true. You just have to Google it.
Well, I mean, there's enough people who are going to listen to this that it'll cater to every single version of reality they want. So don't worry about that.
All right, you guys. Well, thank you for having me. I'm still shocked that people from my Facebook, like, requested this.
It was a lot of people. So that's cool.
I do have a big following.
I even told them, I was like, do you think she asked them to do it? Because it was just a very odd number of people. Having not known you at that point, I know now you wouldn't. But I asked Riley, I was like, do you think she, like, lobbied for people to try to get her on the show? Because it was an uncomfortable amount of people all in a very short amount of time. You must have put a video out that triggered it.
Yeah. So it literally, that's what I kind of said in the beginning. A lady was, like, on there and she was, like, pushing. She was, like, probably 2 or 3 live videos. She was like, I'm telling you, you need to... And I finally said, like, normally I ignore a lot of the comments, but, like, she had made it enough. I was like, listen, I am never going to contact a podcast and be like, you should have me on. So I'm sure that in that moment, anybody that listens to this probably was like, you know what? But I just know. I mean, we get 8 million views. Like, what was it, 8.8? We get my Creator Studio's on my phone. I get like 8.8 million views a month.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, the social media stuff, just you get a share, then it gets a share, and then it's pretty crazy. Yeah,
it's really insane. And like I told him, Facebook is the way to go, though, if you can. If you can get your Facebook monetized, my price per million, my RPM is really high.
Yeah.
But if you want to be consistent, you can make a lot of money. I mean, you saw what that's a 2-week check.
Yeah.
So it's...
Should do it.
Absolutely. And I think that people out there need to know, like, this is the thing. If you cook, you're fantastic. You cook, make a cooking show. People want to see that. I mean, we get people all the time that ask me to cook. I made one meal, one time, cowboy beans, like when it was really cold, and I get requests, like 100 or 200 requests a week.
I'll bet you get some weird requests.
Absolutely we do. We get some fetishy weird stuff. Like
I bet she gets some weird requests because of all the tattoos and the prison stuff.
Yeah. And feet.
Donkey shows?
So
does that mean that you hopped in one of the trailers down to Mexico to the kill pin?
Listen, so she rode a donkey on there, and
that's a bad move.
Yeah, people were super like all animal activists were like, she's too big. Well, the donkey, for what it weighed, she was not too big to be on the donkey. Like, calm down. It was going to slaughter, and she saved its life. Somebody bought it because it was a gentle donkey. Calm down. Well, then you start getting people that are like, so, like, can we Cash App you to like? And we're like, no.
That thing they do in Tijuana, can you do that?
No, it wasn't quite that bad. But we get some feet fetish people. We get some fetish people for sure. Facebook's a weird world. I will not let my child be. Are you going to let your kids just willy-nilly fast and free on social media?
No.
Oh, I'm not. Not after some of, like, so we're pretty inappropriate. But some of the things, like the amount of dick pics that were sent is unreal. That shouldn't even be a thing.
Ridiculous.
And it's people sometimes within like the horse community that I've seen in real life, and I'm like, I never wanted to see that of you. What on earth would make you think that that's a normal thing to send someone?
I don't know. We were talking about mental health for a while.
Well, there are some people out there that have some real problems. We can show you some Facebook messages that would make you. It goes
or don't show them to me.
All right.
Well, I'm going to let you and your Facebook monetization and your eclectic collection of dick pics and whatever else.
Weird stuff.
Get on with your evening.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. All right.
This has been The Gauge, hosted by me, Chance Conrado, produced and edited by our guy, Ty Yeager. Shout out to the executive producers, Dustin Pointer and Cody Denton. Marketing and content produced by Riley Chone. Make sure to rate and review this podcast, as well as follow The Gauge on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And make sure to subscribe to The Gauge wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.